Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 25th of January. Today, the government launches a crackdown on zombie-style knives amid a scourge in crime.
When someone has been the victim of crime, they deserve to have a police response. We've made that very clear to the police leadership. That will be something that happens now as a standard.
Your country doesn't need you. Downing Street rules out conscription after a top army general claimed citizens would need to fight in a potential war against Russia.
Sunak's 6-week deadline. Tory critics warn the Prime Minister has under 2 months to improve the party's chances in the next general election or face a backlash from MPs.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex mingle with anti-monarchist politicians during a film premiere in Jamaica. What are they playing at, we ask?
Homeowners in England face council tax rises as struggling local authorities increase our bills.
And Paul Coit is here with all your sport.
Liverpool are through to the Carabao Cup final after squeezing past Fulham, just about got past them. In the cricket, India against England is underway in the first test. And how about this? Just to show the sport is for all, the 200-metre runner well, I say runner, she's 90. The 200-metre, what would you say? She's not a sprinter.
I'd still call her a runner.
Still call her a runner?
Good on her, that's
okay, yeah. Well, she's still going. She started about 2 weeks ago, but she's still going. But no, that's unfair, but I will show how wonderful she is.
Yeah, she is.
She is.
Better than we could do.
Absolutely.
Paul, you.
Yeah. True.
We'll get a check on your weather this morning with Aidan McGivern.
Following a stormy start to the week, we've got further unsettled weather to talk about over the next couple of days, but not quite as wet and windy. I'll have all the details in the forecast coming up.
Oh, good morning. I thought that was you for a minute.
No,
good morning. I'm Stephen.
That's your name, you see.
Thank you.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. So before we get into the programme, I've got a little bit of a bone to pick with you.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, and it might be about your Twitter upload last night. Now, if you haven't
you've organised this. Look at that, it's romantic.
Yeah, so Stephen has taken my engagement photo shoot, the photo of the moment I got engaged, superimposed his head onto my fiancé and then posted it on Twitter. When I tell you, my stomach dropped when I saw this. I was like, where has he got that from? What is he playing at?
I look great.
Oh, my goodness.
Look how young and manly I look.
I've got so many questions to ask you about this. So how long did that take you?
I did it in about 2 minutes on the phone.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, do you have special software that you can...
I don't know, it was just...
Photoshop.
It's Android for you.
This is the thing. It actually works. The skin tone is almost spot on.
It's quite good.
The blend is...
There's just a bit of line against the fiancé's head.
Natural head sticking out behind you. But other than that...
Yeah. It's not bad. I was quite impressed with that.
It's not bad.
I thought, for once in my life, I look honky. I did wonder if either you would be furious or fiancé would be furious or my husband would be furious.
Well, how was your husband?
Fine.
Fine. Well, we all thought it was hilarious in our house.
I know, I did get a text from your fiancé.
Oh, did you? And he thought it was funny.
So
that's good. We can all see the funny side, but the best part was people actually commenting below saying you look like a couple
in love. Yeah.
No, definitely barking up the wrong tree with that one. But
can't stand her.
Yeah, very amusing. Yeah, well, there's that.
It's great, isn't it? Do you like it?
Very good. I was very artistic and very creative. I'll give you that, and it gave us all a giggle. And don't we need a giggle at the moment?
Yes, yeah, we do. Because
we're in desperate need.
Everything seems to be going horrifically wrong at the moment.
It really does. I mean, just one look at the newspapers. It's a very depressing sight, isn't it? So anyway, it made us laugh.
Apart from the front of the Sun, which is talking about Bobby Brazier going on secret dates with someone from Strictly. But maybe they think we need a giggle as well.
Yeah.
So there you go. But let's start with, look, the government tried to do something positive, though it seems extraordinary it's not been done before. The government set to ban machetes and zombie-style knives following a campaign led by Idris Elba to take them off our streets.
Yes, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, plans to make it illegal to possess, sell, import or manufacture such weapons. And those that do could face up to 2 years in prison.
We have already taken action to make the carrying of zombie knives illegal. When I became Home Secretary, I made the immediate decision to go further, to put forward this secondary legislation to support what we've already done, to make the possession of zombie knives illegal and to close the loophole. We have made it clear to the police that we expect them, in fact we demand that they pursue every reasonable line of inquiry. When someone has been the victim of crime, they deserve to have a police response. We've made that very clear to the police leadership. That will be something that happens now as a standard, and we'll be holding the leadership of the police to account.
Well, all that comes as the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer unveiled his plans to tackle knife crime, promising to support the most vulnerable youngsters in society.
Well, this comes to light as Valdo Calicani's trial continues in Nottingham. He's going to be sentenced today after he stabbed 3 people to death there.
Well, let's talk to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley, who joins us now. Peter, good to see you this morning. I can't be the only person in the country who's thinking, how is it that zombie knives and machetes are still legal to have in the UK?
Well, as individual items, if somebody was to take that out onto the street, they're not legal. They're not legal at all. But there is a bit of a loophole that might enable somebody to keep one underneath their bed, for example. But here we have yet another initiative relating to knives and to weapons. And the big question for me is it going to work? I fear it won't, because we used to have one piece of legislation that called everything offensive weapons. Then we had more legislation that introduced a bladed article. Then we had stipulations as to the length of a blade. Then we had legislation about wording. There couldn't be any wording on the blades of these weapons. And now we're going to get something about the depth of serration and the length of the blade yet again. But what is happening all the time? Teenage blood is being spilt on our streets. And only yesterday in the West Midlands, a teenager was charged with, you've got it, murdering another teenager.
As you say, Peter, the blood continues to get spilt, doesn't it? Do you think going after the knives here is the answer, going after the blades themselves and banning machetes and zombie knives as we see? Or is this more about robust policing and more bobbies on the beat? Is this more of a societal issue than it is about the actual knife in question?
Thank you very much indeed, because yes, it is a societal issue. I'm not going to criticise the further legislation. If the government want to push that through, then absolutely fine. But it's not really tackling the nub of the matter. There is an absolute epidemic of knife crime in our country. People are losing their lives on virtually a daily basis. And that's not to mention all the people that get stabbed and only survive due to the brilliance of the surgeons and the nurses and the doctors. It's absolutely out of hand. What we need more police, we need more stop and search, and yes, we've got stupid mayors, particularly in London, who want to actually reduce stop and search and limit police powers. There are other issues, of course, absent parenting, poverty and the such like, but they're not police matters. I'm a former detective. What we need is clear, robust policing, plenty of stop and search, targeting known offenders and the such like.
But actually, bearing that in mind, Peter, that's quite a difficult and dangerous job for the police, isn't it? If you tackle knife crime, at some point someone's going to be attacked, aren't they?
Policing comes with an element of danger. Everybody knows that when they sign on the dotted line. I still bear the scar of being stabbed in the neck many years ago. The police are better prepared these days. They do have better protective equipment, and if their operations are well planned, then they can, of course, endeavour to minimise risk. But policing comes with risk. Policing is about self-sacrifice. That's why the public used to trust the police, used to respect the police, because they knew that the police would do stuff that they didn't want to do or wouldn't want to do. The police have an awfully big job to regain the trust and the respect of the public. If they get out on the streets, if they make the streets a hostile environment for criminals, if they stop people, if they search people, if they retrieve knives, and then they are supported by the CPS and the courts, by charging people and handing down stern, stiff and appropriate sentences, then we might get some way towards making the streets safer.
OK, Peter Blexley, former Scotland Yard detective, very good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Your thoughts on that would be very welcome this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, Downing Street has ruled out the idea of an army draft, for now at least, after a top army official warned that Britons could face conscription if the country was to find itself at war.
Well, that's as Tory MP Tobias Ellwood said the current state of world politics is reminiscent of 1939 due to the ongoing conflict in both the Middle East and Ukraine.
Well, in the meantime, NATO has begun its biggest military exercise since the Cold War, with 90,000 troops mobilising to show the world it can defend its territory against a potential attack from Russia.
So, should the UK be preparing for World War III? Well, joining us now is the Defence Editor of Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Very good morning to you, Robert. So we're looking at the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning, aren't we, the two of us?
Had a good run on this story.
Yes.
Got leaks from the army. Caught number 10 out. Yep. It's
well, they wanted this all to be kept under wraps, didn't they?
Yeah, the story behind the story is fascinating here. And I'm afraid to say I don't think the Prime Minister is entirely in the clear, because he knows jolly well that a lot of ministries and advisers have been considering this because there aren't enough men and women and men in public service, security services. Up until very recently, all three major services, armed services, were losing more than they were recruiting. And this is the era of, new bit of jargon, of polycrises, of multiple crises coming, as they say when in sentencing, concurrently. And this has been shown up by the requirement for this exercise. It's 20,000 British personnel have been put towards it, but it is only an exercise. The requirements in the Gulf, they've got something going off on Guyana. What happens if something else is happening, and indeed it is, across Syria, Iraq, where US-led bases are being attacked, but there are British personnel in them as well. So how are we going to manage it? But getting some public buy-in to possibly a short-term form of national service has been discussed by our chiefs, and they've been looking at models in Scandinavia, particularly Norway and Sweden, and above all, Finland. And NATO allies are going to be asked to think about this very subject at their major 75th anniversary summit coming up this summer.
But we've got to be careful, haven't we? Because General Sir Patrick Sanders, who sort of sparked all this, hasn't actually said conscription, has he? He's just said civilians need to be prepared.
There are 3 or 4 words which you cannot use, and this is what the PM is steering around. Conscription, national service, call-up, compulsion. It's had a very bad history through the 20th century. They only in World War I got round to it in 1916. It was very controversial. Big call-out, much more consensus, more or less, in World War II, but then a great deal of difficulty as the empire wound down, a vast area with national service troops, servicemen. It was servicemen, largely, in those days, finally abandoned in 1959. And Sir Patrick should be reminded who was most against the culture? The army commandos, and I think that this is a problem. But it's very interesting that he did this speech, which was to be given behind closed-ish doors at an army vehicle demonstration and exhibition. It was leaked to the Daily Telegraph. Somebody must have approved of that speech. They must have known what was coming up. And the PM's spokesman, I understand, said, no, the PM doesn't agree with Sir Patrick Sanders, but oh boy, PM and Leader of the Opposition, this one is coming up big time.
I mean, no existing policies currently spell out how the UK would mobilise a force that would be big enough to take on Russia. Do you think we're going to hear a lot more about
I don't think it's really about taking on Russia, by the way.
Well, it'll be China and Iran.
Well, the trouble is they keep on talking about 1912 or 1914 or 1939. It's not like that, because the era of industrial war is over. It's much more polycrises. We should also be thinking about COVID's, weird weather. 750,000 people volunteered once we went into lockdown with COVID. They didn't know really what to do with them. It's organising public service across the piece. And as somebody said, a very senior military person actually serving said, what we're really looking for is to incentivise young people for volunteer public service, which could be paid and promoted. And that's where they're looking, particularly at places like Norway, the Danes, the Dutch, as I say, but the Norwegian chief of staff, they give them scholarships almost for things for their elite forces. They can't get them out again once they've called up because it's a good employer.
So do we need to... Because the problem with all of this is, and the language that are being used and the way it's been promoted in the papers and all the rest of it, is it's stoking fears of World War III.
Exactly.
But that's not the case then, is it?
It's going to be difficult because Russia is in bed with very strange bedfellows, namely Iran and North Korea, and what is it up to? And I think the warnings from the Scandinavians, above all the Baltics, about this aggressive posture of Putin is well worth having. But look at how he's struggling in Ukraine. He's not going to conquer Western Europe. And that's where I think the analogies, the language is absolutely wrong. But what I think this will come up in one form or another in the general election campaign.
Yeah.
OK. Robert, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, at 16 minutes past 6, let's take a look at some other stories coming into your newsroom.
Well, Norfolk police have launched a murder investigation after 2 girls and a woman were found dead from knife wounds alongside a man's body near Norwich. This was reported last week. The deaths of the 2 girls and the woman are being treated as murder following post-mortem examinations.
Royal Mail is facing backlash over plans to cut letter deliveries from 6 days a week to 5 or even 3. The move is being dubbed by critics as the death of first-class post and is being floated as a cost-saving measure for the firm.
The British Museum is sending some of Ghana's most precious crown jewels back to the African country under a historic loan deal. 32 items, including gold and silver artefacts, will be sent to the country for 3 years, with both parties having an option to renew the arrangement. It could pave the way, supposedly, for the return of the Elgin marbles to Greece. Did you know it's against the law to send them back permanently?
Is it? How?
It just is. We cannot, so we can send them on loan.
Oh.
With all these people saying we need to send everything back,
Yeah.
it's not legal to do so in this country.
Oh.
So we'd have to change the law to do that. I mean, I don't know why it's illegal. Seems a bit mad.
Yeah, what law's that? We need to research that one.
Possibly.
Interesting, very interesting. So maybe we have a co-parenting relationship.
Well, that's the sort of thing. Yeah.
How would potentially move forward.
We can lend them out, but
Yes.
we can't give them back.
What do you make of that? Do let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, Tory critics have warned that Rishi Sunak has 6 weeks left to turn the party's electoral fortunes around before Tory MPs publicise their discontent.
Yes, the 2 by-elections on the 15th of February and the budget on the 6th of March are key tests, we're told, in his leadership.
Well, this comes after the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, claimed that Rishi Sunak is being bullied by his own MPs.
Let's talk to former Special Advisor Charlie Rowley. Morning to you.
Morning both. Hi.
Well, this can come as no great surprise, the state of the party at the moment, that the clock is ticking.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, come on.
Everything's going very well. Well, look, it's been another sort of bumpy week, I think, for the Prime Minister. Not as bumpy as I think people might have thought with Simon Clarke, former Cabinet Minister, Sir Simon Clarke, I should say, calling
Rishi Sunak's former number 2 in the Treasury.
Exactly. So they've worked together, and, you know, it will raise a few eyebrows because it follows the resignation that we saw last year of Robert Jenrick, another close ally of the Prime Minister who resigned as Immigration Minister. But ultimately, what you saw during that particular resignation is, or during the statement that Sir Simon Clarke put out yesterday, is the entire backbench group of Conservative MPs basically coming together in the WhatsApp group to decry what Simon had said and said that they don't agree with him, and now is not the time to be talking about these kinds of things. It's a time for the party to unite, to get behind the Prime Minister, to deliver on all the things that he said he's going to do, and that includes the tax cuts that you just mentioned will be coming, or should be coming, on the 6th of March. And, you know, it's only by being a united party that they can put in a good show, hopefully, on the 15th of February, which I note is a day after Valentine's Day. So we'll see how much love there is for the Conservative Party on the 15th and go from there.
Yes, very good, Charlie.
Thank you. I thought you might like that.
You're laughing your way through this, Charlie. Is that all you can do? Is it laugh or cry for the Tories?
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm only laughing and smiling because I'm with you too.
You love being here, don't you? We love having you here as well, I have to say. So Simon Clarke, though, has implied that there are many others who secretly feel the same way that he does. But is that a sense that you are getting from within the Conservative Party? And do you think there is a sense that they are waiting to see what happens in these 2 by-elections, but you could be facing wipeout in those 2? And then, of course, the 6th of March and that budget. There is that pressure, isn't there, to pull a real big rabbit out of that hat?
Yes, no, I think there is, and we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think, look, the idea that the Prime Minister is going anywhere, I think, is for the birds. The party, the country will never forgive, I think, the Conservative Party if they change leader again in the run-up to the general election. I think that would be a gift to the Labour Party. And so I think it is just about sticking the course. It's about making sure that actually, the party can, when it goes to the election, it can say to the country, it's delivered on some of the things that it said it's going to do. Now, it might not deliver in total all of the things that it said it's going to do, but making huge strides and huge progress in the areas that Rishi has identified. I think the country, bearing in mind, people still are not totally convinced about Sir Keir Starmer. They're not convinced about the Labour Party. It means that it is all to play for, I still believe. But it's just about demonstrating to the public that you've done the things that you've said that you're going to do.
What is worrying, though, is disloyalty here. Now, look, people will accuse Rishi Sunak of being disloyal to Boris Johnson, so maybe you reap what you sow. But as you say, Robert Jenrick, an ally, gone. Sir Simon Clarke, former ally, now turning against him. And now some pesky special advisor, Charlie, doing the same thing.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, Will Dry is a former special advisor in Number 10, obviously put out a statement that he'd resigned in just before Christmas. I mean, I know Will. I work with Will in the Department for Levelling Up and in the Cabinet Office. He's young, he's bright, he's energetic. He did some good work in terms of policy development in both of those departments.
But no, he's physically sort of organising a group against the PM, isn't he?
Well, he's a part of an organisation that conducted a poll not so long ago that had probably the worst-case scenario, if it can be included as a scenario for the Conservatives. I don't believe that will happen. But he's been on a political journey, and this is just another road that he's gone down, which I wouldn't go down myself. But I think, you can get obsessed by the polling. You can get obsessed by current predictions, but I think we all know that a week is a long time in politics. You have to play to people's emotions, their head and the heart, and a lot can change between now and November, if that's when the general election is going to be, with those tax cuts, with the economy starting to pick up, when you're starting to see, hopefully, the backlog in the NHS starting to come down, providing that there are no more strikes taking place in the NHS, where you're seeing the economy growing, where people can feel that pound in their pocket again. There could be a very good case for the Conservative Party in the run-up to the general election when that dial shifts because of all the things that it's achieving. And so I don't agree with Will that it is, as he describes it, to be the situation. I think it is still to play for.
When the dial shifts, you say? If, you mean?
Well, I think that's a very good point, and I think naturally any general election you see the polls narrow. And look, I always say this to people that I was, in the Tory party. I was in the campaign in 2017 when Theresa May was 20 points ahead herself. I can see during a campaign how it can really focus the minds, and people, do take politics seriously. It didn't go as well as she sort of hoped it would, and I think it might not go as well for Sir Keir Starmer and Labour Party as they think that it may.
We shall see.
We shall.
We shall see, Charlie. Thanks very much indeed.
At 24 minutes past 6, let's get your weather update with Aidan McGibbon.
Hello, good morning. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A lot of cloud across the UK today with outbreaks of rain in many places, but it will also be mild. We've got our weather coming in from the southwest. Those southwesterly winds are pushing cloudy and damp conditions across the country. Yeah, there'll be a bit of snow over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but generally this is wet weather that's moving in. A chilly but bright start in the far northeast before the rain moves in during the afternoon. And the rain will be on and off in many places, most damp in the west, driest towards the southeast, mild everywhere, 12 or 13 Celsius. Now, in the far west, some brightness as we end the day, albeit with a few showers coming along. But for many, we keep the rain going overnight. Again, heavy at times and persistent across western and eventually central parts. In fact, the rain, if anything, peps up overnight, heading southeastwards as the night progresses, followed by showers and colder air, perhaps a touch of frost in the far north under any prolonged clear spells, but enough of a breeze, I think, to keep generally frost-free conditions. Now we say goodbye to the rain first thing Friday, and then brighter skies across much of the country. Plenty of sunshine for England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland at times seeing blue skies. But there will be quite a number of showers into Northern Ireland, parts of central and northern Scotland, some snow over the tops of the mountains. Blustery here, fine elsewhere.
Thanks, Aidan. Now, local councils are set to receive an additional £600 million to avoid further bankruptcies. But it could cost you, the taxpayer. We'll tell you more.
Us.
Well, us as well, yeah.
And mind you, us.
Us as well. It's not good. We'll tell you more in just a second.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:28, loads of you getting in touch this morning by the droves, hundreds of people congratulating us on our engagement.
Oh, shut up.
Thanks very much indeed.
We got that silly photo
after
again.
the picture I put on Twitter last night.
Yeah.
She's excellent, celebrating. You did look lovely on that day.
Oh, thank you very much.
Really, really lovely.
Thank you. I wish I washed my hair. I hadn't washed my hair. It looked a bit straggly, but anyway.
It didn't look remotely straggly.
It did a bit.
Very, very fun. There you go. Look at that. I put that on Twitter last night.
Oh, dear.
Tell people about. And look
Here we
how
go.
natural that looks.
Please. So if you didn't catch this on
to be
Twitter
fair,
last night,
it looks like Gerard is wearing one of those masks.
Yes, of you. So you don't know, this is my engagement photo that Stephen has taken off my WhatsApp, superimposed his face on, and then posted to Twitter. Thank you very much, Stephen, for that.
Look at that lovely
and you're
chest.
very impressed with yourself.
Not mine, I mean.
very impressed with yourself.
So I was just impressed with
yes,
my
yes.
open shirt.
Yes, but the blend is actually uncanny there.
I look fabulous.
You've got the same skin tone, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's about all we've got. To be fair.
But anyway, I hope it's given you a giggle this morning.
So we
made us laugh.
We look great there, and Tonya says we look great this morning in our green outfits. Look at that. Very nice.
And look, he's got a pocket square.
Pocket square. And Malcolm says, "You're not telling me this green match was not planned."
It is.
She rings
It's
me
ridiculous, yeah.
You've got to wear green tomorrow.
Yeah, we like to blend. Actually, I gave you some options yesterday. So purple, red or green, you choose. And then you said you've got a lovely new set, which you do, which you're modelling very well today.
Thank you very much.
And we went with green, so I'm glad that you're enjoying that.
Yeah.
Very good. There's lots on other serious things as well.
Yeah, we'll go through those
We'll
a
go through
little
those
bit
a bit later, shall
To
we?
be fair, you're not wearing the green dress I was expecting.
Oh, you start to know my wardrobe now, do you?
Yeah, because my husband said last night, does that mean Ellie's going to wear the Kermit dress? And I said, no, she'll be wearing that other one, but you are wearing the Kermit dress.
Is this the Kermit dress?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't unsee it now. Oh, that's so mean.
That's not mine. He
So
said
like a frog.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Lovely.
Dixon, for that. Anyway.
Now, let's talk
Now
about
I've been
council.
put back in my box.
Let's cheer you up by talking about council tax, should we?
Yes, let's, because local councils in England are set to receive an additional £600 million worth in funding from the government to help avoid further bankruptcies.
Yeah, it comes after more than 40 Tory MPs signed a letter this week urging the PM to inject cash into councils. But the question is, are we going to see a rise in council tax as a result?
Well, joining us now is Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, Elliot... Is it Keck? Yes. Make sure I've got that right. Elliot Keck, yes. So lessons been learnt here, Elliot, hasn't it? From Birmingham and Nottingham and the like. They do not want to see other councils going bust.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the backdrop for this announcement yesterday that £600 million is going to be injected into mostly social care budgets. We've seen a whole host of councils declare effective declarations of bankruptcy, what's known as a Section 114 notice. That's not just Birmingham, it's Nottingham, it's Thurrock, Croydon, Slough and Woking in recent years. The interesting thing about these individual councils, though, that have declared bankrupt is that none of them have been cases where you've seen an unprecedented demand on various services unmatched by budgets. Actually, each individual council has been a chaotic tale of financial mismanagement. So we're not in the territory yet where there are councils that are well-run, well-managed that are going under. So far, it's individual tales of absolutely disastrous mismanagement, and I think that does need to be borne in mind.
Yeah, but we are in a situation where all councils, and whether they're going bankrupt or not, are busy saying they just haven't got enough money. And our bills are going up.
Well, absolutely. And listen, councils have, I mean, not to be cynical, but councils do have a communications pitch to roll out ahead of almost inevitable council tax increases coming up in March. They need to start explaining to the public, explaining to their residents why they're increasing their council tax bills and putting out targeted stories talking about how we have these massive funding crises are one of the ways that they do that. I think in terms of this funding in particular, we're looking at funding that is mostly going towards social care, which is an area where council budgets are genuinely stretched. I think that is tolerable, and I think residents will appreciate why that's necessary. But you look at the broader picture, council tax has gone up by about 79% in real terms, that's including inflation, since it was introduced. We've seen now council tax amounting to over 10% of people's salaries in some parts of the country, like Nottingham. And I think people are really looking at councils and thinking, given how much money I pay every year, how do you not have enough to cope?
Yeah. So now we could face up to 5% more on bills, some of the papers are saying.
Yeah, which would be another year of 5% rises for people up and down the country. It happened last year. I believe it happened the year before. Some places, the places like Nottingham and Birmingham, where the council has gone bankrupt, are being allowed to increase bills by as much as 10%. This is going to be really crippling for household budgets.
But hold on a minute. Why are they allowed to increase it more if they're being bailed out by the people they're failing?
Yeah.
But also they're getting this extra cash injection.
Well, yeah, it makes it a really, really difficult one to stomach. I mean, it really is difficult to explain to residents who are completely blameless for this, completely faultless for this. They've been paying their council tax bills year after year and the council has gone under, why they're going to have to be paying such crippling increases. And we talk about how Rishi Sunak is not getting the credit for, cutting taxes, let's say national insurance. And it's because every time there's a tax cut, there's a concomitant increase in taxes that eats away all of those benefits.
Yeah. OK. Elliot Keck, very good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, it is 6:34. Let's remind you of the top stories this morning.
The government launches a crackdown on zombie-style knives amid a surge in crime.
Downing Street rules out conscription after a top army general claimed citizens would need to fight in a potential war against Russia.
Tory critics warn the Prime Minister has under 2 months to improve the party's chances in the next general election or face more backlash from MPs.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been mingling with anti-monarchist politicians during a film premiere in Jamaica. Oh, go on, it's you.
Oh, all right. Well, Paul Coit is here with all of the latest sport. Morning to you.
I just insisted that it's Ellie that introduces me from now on, because at least she gives me a bit of respect from time to time. So is that OK?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I know you're always knocking me and everything. But Ellie,
I mean, you could have put a tie on, Paul, but I'm just
I could have
saying...
made an effort.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, now you've got the pocket square. I was only just the pocket square, and you got up with a double.
I know.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You never told me about the great Ellie either.
Should we talk about Liverpool?
OK.
They're very happy, aren't they?
Well, they will be fairly happy. Fulham, they were 1-0 up in the first leg of the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, and they went 1-0 up at Craven Cottage yesterday, and you're thinking this is going to be a rout like the Chelsea game was the day before. Ended up 1-1, and it was very close, and Fulham nearly did it. They were very close to... getting that equaliser, because obviously on aggregate 1-1 is not good enough, because that means it would be 2-1 to Liverpool, which basically means that Liverpool are now in the Carabao Cup final and will play Chelsea on February the 25th. So that's the story there.
How confusing. Right.
The funny thing is,
totally confused.
It's not confusing. It's just the way I tell it.
Oh, I see.
We'll make it sound a lot more confusing. But if you want confusion, maybe we'll talk a little cricket, shall we?
Oh, yeah, go on.
This is going on at the moment in Hyderabad in India. So England have gone over there, and very rarely does any team win in a Test series in India. It just doesn't very often happen. England did it a few years ago, but apart from that, it very rarely happens. At tea, anyway, because it's still lovely that you can still say at tea. Serve tea, that's what happens. England 108 for 3, which is actually a very good score. It's a very fast start. It's the fastest start that any team has made playing in India, visiting for the... I see, I'm going to throw you again. For the opening for any to start the batting off for over 7 years. So put it this way, they're doing absolutely fine. England are doing very well.
Oh, good. Well, that's some good news.
But to explain a little bit more, Monty Panasani, one of our great spinners.
Yes.
Now, what's great about Monty is that Monty had great success over in India, playing over there, has extremely long fingers. So hopefully he will show us his fingers. Put it this way.
What time's
he's
he
like
on?
Edward Scissorhands, and that's how he spins the ball. About 8:30 he's going to be with us. So we'll speak to him.
Lovely.
He's such a nice guy as well.
He's lovely, Monty. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll speak to Monty a little bit later.
So we talk semis.
Oh. I was going to say, should we talk down
tennis?
Under?
Yes, let's talk about the tennis. We have the semi-finals of the women, which is today. Aryna Sabalenka from Belarus against Coco Gauff, who is the US Open champion and who is seeded number 4. Did you know? Probably not, but I'm going to give it to you anyway, that Coco Gauff, because her real name is Corrie. Did you know that?
Oh, right.
Because I don't know why you would shoot it from Corrie. But the family is... The mum is called Candy. The dad is also called Corrie.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he was also called Candy.
It's also, in fact, they're all called Candy. Cody is the son.
Oh, please.
And there's another son called Cameron.
Are they like
and
the
the dog is called Coity. What are the chances?
Are they like the Kardashians?
Yeah, the Kardashians of
It does sound
tennis.
a little bit like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's and no Colin, unfortunately.
No Colin.
There is no Colin. So Aryna Sabalenka against Coco Gauff. That gets underway later this morning. Diana Yastramenka, who is a qualifier. There's Coco anyway there. There's Colin's in the background waving her on. Diana Yastramenka is playing Kunwen Zheng. Now, Diana, she is completely unseeded and also a qualifier as well.
Right.
So we wish her well.
Yeah, one to watch there.
Right.
And our favourite story.
Well, like a world record.
We might have to leave that one.
No, we're doing it.
You are joking.
We're doing it. I'm doing it.
I'm building up. The whole thing has been building up to this.
Yeah.
Tell us about this world record. This 90-year-old woman.
Emma Maria Mazenga. Now, the new world record holder. There she goes.
Hey, she's doing all right.
She's running.
There she goes.
Yeah, she's
now,
got good
the thing
pace
is,
on her
it looks
there.
like she's pacing herself, but that's as fast as she's going to go. But I tell you what, you can't knock her. She's 90 years old.
Good on her.
90 years
great.
old. So she is the world record holder. I don't know how, with respect. how many other competitors there are in the W90 category for women over 90 that sprint, but she's done the 200 metres. There we are, we're halfway round there.
Yeah.
54.47 seconds. The previous record was from 13 years ago. I don't know whether she is still with us, the one that had the record before. But if it makes you feel any better, the oldest woman in the London Marathon when I did that, the oldest woman in the race, beat me by 45 minutes, and I'm sure this one would as well.
Look at her go.
Mazenga, there you go. Is she going to dip on the line? Come on, Emma. There you go. It's a new world record.
I tell you what, I know you're laughing. You were laughing about that lady.
I was
earlier
not
on.
laughing about it.
That, for a 90-year-old...
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I
it's
couldn't
unbelievable.
do that. I could do that.
It's unbelievable.
She'd be lapping.
And you know what I got in an hour? A 99-year-old swimmer. You wait
Perfect.
for that one.
You're outdoing yourself this morning. Brilliant.
Good on her. Good on her. You couldn't do that, Ellie. No,
No,
'cause
I couldn't. I don't think I could even walk a lap.
You'd spill your cocktail.
I would. I would. I'd be in no.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
No, good stuff, Emma.
Paul,
good
thank
stuff.
you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Inspiring.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
She doesn't look 90,
I don't think I
does
could
she?
even run to the end of my driveway.
You can't be that old.
How long
No,
is
I
the
think
driveway?
I am. I think I really am quite unfit.
3 feet.
Yeah, I think it's a mile-long driveway.
Yes,
She's got, isn't she?
I wish.
Yeah.
One day, Coity. At the moment, it's about 3 metres, yeah.
Right. Now, the British Museum is returning Ghana's crown jewels in a historic deal. Could this open the door for more? We'll tell you more in the papers in just a moment.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
6:43, good morning. Let's have a look at the front pages for you. This start with The Guardian. It says people are furious about the Prime Minister's social homes for British workers plan.
The Times reiterates the Army Chief's call to have a UK citizen army to fight Russia.
The Telegraph has number 10 ruling out that Army Chief's warning.
The Daily Express leads with the Prime Minister insisting that the Royal Mail will not cut deliveries to 3 days a week.
The Eye says the Post Office was aware of IT faults, but prosecuted staff anyway. We sort of knew that, didn't we, at this stage?
Yeah, I think we did. Well, let's welcome now former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker and political consultant Emma Burnell. Very good to see you both this morning. Emma, let's start with the front page of The Telegraph, shall we, this morning? It's the PM ruling out conscription.
Yes, I mean,
the PM is ruling out conscription is kind of a non-story. This is always an interesting dance that happens around this time of year before the budget, where somebody in the army will stand up and go, the army hasn't got nearly enough money, we need more money. The new angle that they found this year, which you can absolutely see is a useful one for them, is if we do not have enough people in our standing army, we will have to conscript. And that obviously puts pressure then on there to be budgetary changes in the MOD to make sure that they've got enough people in the standing army. So this is quite clever lobbying, essentially, from this general to try to increase the budget of the army. Now, it's certainly true that our standing army is considerably smaller than it has been really at any time certainly in the last century. It's also true that it's lower than I think it was 82,000, Norman will correct me if I'm wrong, that was promised in the last Defence Review. So there are definitely moves needed. And you can see that the MOD have relaxed, for example, certain rules around recruitment. You can have a beard now and a tattoo, which I didn't know you couldn't have before. Maybe I could have a beard and a tattoo. Well, I'm not going to join the army.
There's hardly anyone in the army without a tattoo.
Well, that was what slightly confused me. I mean, I've met a lot of, certainly former squaddies.
Have you?
This is a breakfast show, Stephen.
So they've all got tattoos.
That's all I'm saying.
Lots of ink.
Oh, dear. Norman, what do you make of this?
Well, I mean, I think the issue is what's the army for, is the first question. And I think the army is perfectly adequate in its numbers to defend this country.
What? As it currently stands?
To defend this country. If you want to have an army which is going around the world acting as the world's policeman, which it tends to do, that's a different issue altogether, because there aren't enough people to do that. And we're stretched by being in various parts of the world. Notably, of course, our forces are out in the Red Sea at the moment and so on. So if you want to do all these things, then you haven't got enough people. If you just want to protect this country, then you have...
Well, I'll tell you what, lots of people in the army would say we haven't got enough people to protect this country.
Well, I don't agree with that, but I mean, they may well say that. The other issue, of course, is that in terms of looking at security, we're moving away. You know, Russia's not going to fight a 19th century war with us. We're moving to a situation where the destabilisation of this country by cyber security, for example, needs to be looked at carefully. We need to look at the ability for the Russians to potentially infiltrate, say, our water supply, stuff like that. So the kind of warfare we might face from the Russians is going to be rather different, and the Chinese, by the way, is rather different to how it was in the past. And we need to be sure that we're actually dealing with today's threats rather than yesterday's threats.
But do we need to be having a conversation about this? I mean, Emma, you're talking there saying these conversations do come up around pre-budget, but we are operating, at least the government is, in a much more dangerous world. We at least need to be having a conversation about how prepared, how ready we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Norman is right that we need to look at what the current environment is. I'm not as confident as he is that we won't face, I mean, not necessarily on our shores, but certainly within NATO, of which we are a member, and therefore we are committed to taking action if another NATO country is attacked. We may well face the kind of attacks that we've seen within the Ukraine, which is an old-fashioned ground war of attrition. So I do think that there are readiness conversations that need to be had. I don't think it has to be either or. I don't think it's cyber or boots on the ground. No, I'm not. I'm quite dovish. I'm very much kind of war as a last resort. I'm not a pacifist, and therefore I do believe that if I'm going to ask fellow countrymen to go out and fight on my behalf, then we should give them the respect and the resources that they need and deserve. But there is a complication with having a standing army we never use and not enough investment in other areas. Or having enough of an army that if something did happen, we're able to mobilise and ready straight away.
The uncertainty which there is, of course, is what happens if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, because he may well pull out of NATO. I mean, he's radical on that regard, and leave the Europeans to deal with Europe, which is always what American presidents threaten, but never actually do. But he may well do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we shall see on that one. So have to watch it closely. I do think there needs to be a lot more investment. Yeah. That's just my view. Norman, let's have a look at talk about investment. I don't know what to make of the Royal Mail. Whereas, I mean, the PM's putting his foot down, But it seems like at least they're talking about reducing deliveries from 6 days to possibly as few as 3.
Well, the question is which is more disastrous, the Post Office or the Royal Mail, which are different organisations, but used to be linked, of course, with the General Post Office, if you're old enough as I am to remember these things. The Daily Mail front page has first-class fiasco. The fact of the matter is that the Royal Mail is losing money hand over fist because people are now no longer using it in the way they did. The internet's still there. They've now got packages being sent by different couriers and so on. And and people don't write letters anymore in the way they did. But we've still got the same arrangements in place. So I'm very wedded to a 6-day delivery. I think it's very civilised to have that, but ultimately it is losing money. The difficulty is if you cut it down, as been suggested by Ofcom, to 3 days a week, which is, you know, the end of the Royal Mail.
Well, it is,
because no one's going to bother using it. They're going to say, well, it's not going to work.
Well, to be perfectly honest, some other company's going to jump in that gap.
Well, it may well do, but the trouble is the Royal Mail is left under the universal requirement to deliver at the same price to every single house in the country. And people may well jump in to deliver in Islington or Barnet. They won't jump in to deliver in the Outer Hebrides.
Yeah.
No.
No, I mean, and we are using the mail less. This is the problem. We don't... I mean, I've stopped sending Christmas cards. It's just too bloody expensive. Even when you... And I've never bought a first-class stamp, not for 5 years at least, because they get there at the same time with a second-class stamp these days. But how often do you actually go to the post box and send a letter? Because it used to be, certainly while I was growing up, that was something that people did, if not daily, then certainly weekly. Now it's, maybe once every 3 months, if that. Meanwhile, people are coming to your door with the steady stream of packages all day, every day. But Norma's absolutely right. I'm lucky. I live in East London. I've got those resources. People in rural areas, people in places in more remote areas don't have that same level of service from anyone else other than the supposed guarantee from the Royal Mail. I'm not sure that they're living up to that guarantee constantly. But it is just not economically viable for the Royal Mail as a company. And when we decided to make them a company and not a service, that was the bottom line that they have to stick to.
And it does mean, ultimately, postage is going to get very, very expensive, isn't it?
Well, we're going to end up with moving towards a
More
situation
expensive.
where if you want a first-class delivery, so-called next-day delivery, you'll pay a surcharge, almost like a telegram used to be. You'll pay way over the odds to get your letter the next day. That's what we're going towards.
Yes, which will kill it off altogether, pretty much.
Well, that's it. You know, a 3-day service will be no good to anyone. So eventually, it's that kind of economy that doesn't actually save you. It's a death knell rather than a saviour.
Yeah.
Emma, let's stay with you, shall we? And Labour's plans to tackle knife crime. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so Keir Starmer has been speaking out. This is his sort of mission around crime. I'm very, very impressed that none of the papers have gone with the phrase Labour's crime spree, because that's what I would have done as a pun artist. But essentially what he's saying is not that there's going to be new legislation, but that the framework exists to tackle this, but it's not being used properly. So all of the softer end of the punishment levels are being utilised rather than things like tagging, things like curfews, antisocial behaviour orders.
Does any of that actually work?
I think tagging can work. It's very draconian, though.
I mean, I don't know if anyone's monitored... Yeah, I mean, curfews, unless you're tagged, who's going to monitor
Well,
them?
this is it. It's all very well saying, let's do all these things, but it will take money. It will take investment. And if you want to go down that route, you have to then also go down the route of spending the money to make it work. Otherwise, you know, it won't work.
It's dealing with the problem after it's occurred. This is the problem.
Yeah.
Let's be quite clear what's happening. Starmer's trying to look tough on crime. That's what the story is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, in terms of actually the issue, and I speak as someone who dealt with this as a Home Office Minister as part of my brief, you know, if someone's stabbed, that's a failure because it's happened. And, you know, tagging them afterwards or curfews is in a way neither here nor there.
All right, well, that's a very good point. So how do you tackle it before it happens? Because, I mean, that's a huge sort of almost socio-economic problem, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But what works, and what I saw working, was investing in youth facilities. giving them places to go in a constrained and constructed way, getting them involved in, say, boxing or something like that. I saw these facilities around London, and people were diverted into something like this, and they went away from crime. And that you deal with it by giving them something else in advance.
But isn't there also an issue with this and about absentee fathers and all these sort of issues?
There is, yeah.
Which is... I mean, I wouldn't know even where to start.
Well, no, it's very difficult, and part of it comes down to schools, but of course teachers are constrained these days on what they can and can't do. But there was a great organisation called Red Thread, I think it was called Red Thread, which I came across as a minister, which were young people who had been involved in knife crime and now went away from it. And when there was an incident that happened with knife crime and someone was stabbed, those young people would go into the hospital and say, look, guys, you know, is this sensible? You should come off this. And they were actually quite effective at taking people out of knife crime.
Well, if you speak to former gang members, and we are going to be speaking to one a little bit later on in the programme, a lot of it is about when they're joining a gang, it's about that sense of belonging. It's about that sense of feeling at home somewhere because they don't feel at home in the house that they're brought up in.
Absolutely, and I think there's a real misunderstanding about what gangs give, particularly young men, which is that sense of pride, that sense of being a part of a tribe. Identity. Something that we all actually enjoy. And I think, you know, when we talk about the failures that lead to gang violence, we sometimes focus too much on the individual failures and not enough, as Norman was saying, on the societal failures that have left these young men feeling that that is the only way to get that pride and that sense of their masculinity.
It is something we are going to have to look at as a country, otherwise it's sticking plaster rather than anything else. We have got to leave it there, sadly. Emma, Norman, thank you both very much indeed. We will see you a little bit later on, so we'll look forward to that. But in the meantime, should we see what the weather's going to do for us?
Yeah, let's ask Aidan.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A lot of cloud across the UK today with outbreaks of rain in many places, but it will also be mild. We've got our weather coming in from the southwest. Those southwesterly winds are pushing cloudy and damp conditions across the country. Yeah, there'll be a bit of snow over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but generally this is wet weather that's moving in. A chilly but bright start in the far northeast before the rain moves in during the afternoon. And the rain will be on and off in many places, most damp in the west, driest towards the southeast, mild everywhere, 12 or 13 Celsius. Now, in the far west, some brightness as we end the day, albeit with a few showers coming along. But for many, we keep the rain going overnight. Again, heavy at times and persistent across western and eventually central parts. In fact, the rain, if anything, peps up overnight, heading southeastwards as the night progresses, followed by showers and colder air, perhaps a touch of frost in the far north under any prolonged clear spells, but enough of a breeze, I think, to keep generally frost-free conditions. Now we say goodbye to the rain first thing Friday, and then brighter skies across much of the country. Plenty of sunshine for England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland at times seeing blue skies. But there will be quite a number of showers into Northern Ireland, parts of central and northern Scotland, some snow over the tops of the mountains. Blustery here, fine elsewhere.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 25th of January. Today, the government launches a crackdown on zombie-style knives amid a scourging crime.
When someone has been the victim of crime, they deserve to have a police response. We've made that very clear to the police leadership. That will be something that happens now as a standard.
Rishi Sunak's 6-week deadline. Tory critics warn the Prime Minister has under 2 months to improve the party's chances in the next general election or face more backlash from MPs.
Downing Street rules out conscription after a top army general claimed we, citizens, would need to fight in a potential war against Russia.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex mingle with anti-monarchist politicians during a film premiere in Jamaica.
Homeowners in England face council tax rises as struggling local authorities increase bills.
And Paul Coit is here with all your sport.
Good news. England have made a strong start in India.
Good.
First test, which is good news.
Yeah.
Liverpool are through to the Carabao Cup final. Good news if you're a Liverpool fan. And I will have more senior athletes for you also after our 200-metre world record 90-year-old.
What's her name? Emma.
Yes.
90-year-old.
I can't remember what
I could
her
have
name is.
more. I think we should do a special segment every day.
Okay.
Right, a different, what do you think?
Very
a different...
talented older people.
What, in sport?
Yes, in sport.
OK, that's me. I'm the first one.
Yeah.
So there we are.
Excellent.
Without the talent, of course.
Lovely. Paul, thank you. Aidan McGivern's got the weather for you this morning.
Following a stormy start to the week, we've got further unsettled weather to talk about over the next couple of days, but not quite as wet and windy. I'll have all the details in the forecast coming up.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Go on.
Julie says she's confused. Good morning,
Morning,
Julie.
I'm often confused.
Yes. Aren't both Stephen and Ellie engaged?
No, I'm married.
Yes.
Thank you.
Stephen is married. He has a husband, actually. She says, I might have got it wrong, but have you both changed your mind and got together? No. Is the answer to that one. So this is my engagement photo, which Stephen has very creatively, actually,
hijacked.
Yes, hijacked, and superimposed his own head on. You might actually be able to spot my real fiance's head poking out the back of his. But it is very creative and obviously that good that people think that might actually be us on a boat in Thailand.
Yes, there you go. I've never been to Thailand.
Well, you're there in spirit.
Well, there you go. No, I was just trying to find a decent picture of us and couldn't find one, so I made one up.
I don't know how. We take photos every day.
Well, I know, but you take photos every day. I don't.
Yeah, but anyway, it gave me a good giggle.
There you go. Araka.
I would say Araka.
Or was it Araka?
Arakara.
Arakara? It's an unusual name. It says, I think you both had a little wine last night, hence the photo. Are you needing more coffee this morning? I don't even drink.
Doesn't even drink. Doesn't even drink.
I did that sober.
That's just his creative juices flowing.
Don't have any of them.
And apparently it didn't take you very long.
No, I just did it on the phone.
He's so techie. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even know where to start with putting someone's head on a photo. Wouldn't even know where to start. There you were, whipping one up in 2 minutes.
Well, there you go. Not for the first time.
And did you touch the skin tone?
No, I didn't do the skin tone.
Very good.
Naturally,
very
me
good.
and the fiancé are very, very similar in looks and style.
Yes, yes, yes.
Age.
You're quite enjoying the low cut.
low-cut top. I would imagine. I might have worn one of those if I was 20 years younger, not now. Any chest hair I have... Any chest hair I have now is white.
Oh,
it's true. It's true.
Do you wear necklaces?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So you've got that in common.
Yeah.
Like the bling.
Can you imagine being engaged to me? I'm 50 in a month.
Yeah, no.
50.
Barking up the wrong tree with that one, Julie. But anyway, it's made us laugh, and we hope it's made you laugh as well, because don't we need it at the moment, honestly?
Yeah, well, I hope it's made more of you tune in this morning, which was
and
the whole
that
point.
as well. Well, it has gone almost, I would say, viral. I don't know what the threshold for viralism is.
Viralism? I don't know. Slightly more than that, I think, but you never know.
No, what did you say, 24K?
Oh, it's been seen by 24,000 people.
I would say that's...
Semi-viral.
No, I'd say right up there.
Not quite pandemic level, though.
Well, no. Not quite pandemic.
But we'll get it there.
We'll get it there. Yep. We'll see what we've come up with next week, shall we?
Oh, apparently 5 million views is viral. So
we're a little way off then on 24,000. But in my book, that's
You
viral.
didn't retweet it, though, did you?
No.
No, in fact, it took you about an hour to like...
I don't want anybody else to get the wrong end of the stick.
It took you an hour to like it.
Well, I messaged you straight away. We've had a little giggle about it. Oh, look, he's not happy.
OK, shall we move on?
Let's. To the news of the day, shall we? Because Tory critics have warned that Rishi Sunak has 6 weeks left to turn the party's electoral fortunes around before Tory MPs publicise their discontent.
Yeah, 2 by-elections on the 15th of February, so, you know, what's going to happen there. Plus, we've got the budget on March the 6th. So they're going to be... I mean, they really are key tests in the Prime Minister's leadership.
Well, this comes after the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer claimed that Rishi Sunak is being bullied by his own MPs.
Let's talk to former special advisor in the Conservative Party, Charlie Rowley. Good morning to you, Charlie.
Morning, Rafe. Hi.
I mean, you have to say the PM must, especially when it comes to by-elections, must just be dreading this, because it seems very unlikely they're going to go his way, the way things are at the moment.
Well, they will be difficult. And, look, the circumstances of which those by-elections have come about will obviously play, I think, into voters' minds. But it's always difficult for governing parties to win by-elections. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I think your second date that you identified, the 6th of March, where the budget, the Chancellor will get up into the House of Commons and deliver what I think we're all expecting to be tax cuts, who will hopefully set out to the country that the difficult decisions have been taken through the pandemic.
But the problem with that is... And look, it's not to say it won't be welcomed, but the problem with that is it is seen very much as an election gimmick, isn't it?
Well, I think it's going to the country to say, look, we've had a bit of a difficult time. The country's had to spend a lot of money, particularly to deal with the COVID. And, yes, the taxes have been high to fund public services, but now, because all that hard work, inflation has come down, the economy is starting to grow a little bit, can do more, but, we'll see more of that in the months ahead, we hope. But we can also now deliver tax cuts to people that have worked hard, played by the rules, always done the right thing. And, that is something that the public, I'm sure, will want to see and get behind.
So we've heard from Sir Simon Clarke this week, haven't we, saying that Rishi Sunak needs to go. We've also heard from Will Dryan, a special advisor like yourself, formerly very, very close with Rishi Sunak, essentially saying that the political system as it stands is broken. And he also mentions our very own Nigel Farage, doesn't he? And he says that, depending on what he decides to do, the Conservative Party could be done by Christmas.
Well, I know Will. I like Will. Worked with him very closely at the Department for Levelling Up and in the Cabinet Office. He's very young, bright, energetic, did a lot of good work. But on this, I fundamentally disagree, because I think you can get obsessed by, obviously, current polling predictions when the public are largely, I think, not engaged in politics. And, there will always be a view, yes, about the Conservative Party and the internal politics that we've seen played out in public, which is never ideal. But when you ask the question about the Labour Party, when you ask the question about Sir Keir Starmer, people still aren't convinced. So I think, look, a week is a long time in politics. Those polls will shift as you get towards a general election. So I don't agree with Will on this, and I think that there is still hope for the Tories yet. OK, Charlie, stay put. We're going to talk to the Home Office Minister, Chris Philp, who joins us now. Minister, good to see you, as always. Can we start by talking about zombie knives and machetes and things of that nature, which the government is now pushing to ban? It boggles the mind that this wasn't in place already when you look at some of these weapons, which are horrific.
Yeah, well, a load of these weapons were banned in 2019, and we're now going further, laying a statutory instrument in Parliament today to close some loopholes and ban even more of these weapons to keep people safe. Serious violence has gone down by 52% since 2010, but we want to go further and take all of these knives out of circulation, and that's what we're doing today, backed, of course, by record police numbers.
Announced 5 months ago that they were planning to introduce tougher regulations. Now we've seen this campaign by the actor Idris Elba. Does it take a campaign by a top British actor to actually get the Conservative Party to act on this?
No, it doesn't. These measures were announced about 3 or 4 months ago, as you said, I think, a minute ago. So this was all in progress already, and we worked on drafting the legislation over the sort of run-up to Christmas, and it's being laid in Parliament today. But look, I think he was making some good points. We want to work together with charities and other campaigners to make sure we're doing everything possible. We're investing, obviously, in things like youth services. We've taken 120,000 knives off the street through initiatives like Stop and Search, which we fully support. By contrast, Labour mayors like Sadiq Khan are not using those powers as fully as they should, in our view. So a combination of tough enforcement, record police numbers, using powers like Stop and Search, but also diverting young people into other activity to get them onto a better track. All of those things together have reduced serious violent crime by 52% since 2010, but we want to go further and get it down even more.
Yeah, but this is reactive rather than proactive, and it's not that that's a bad thing in the current situation, but what needs to be done proactively so that people are never ending up in this situation?
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of things. I think, first of all, I mentioned record police numbers. We need those police on the street patrolling the hotspot areas. We've been doing that for the last few years, and we're going to be doing even more of it from April this year. So police are patrolling visibly in those hotspots. As I say, it's been happening already. We're going to do even more from April. I think the second thing is using those powers like Stop and Search to get knives off the street, to stop people who are suspected of carrying. The police should be using those powers confidently to take knives off the streets. We're also investing in the Home Office in some new technology. It's not ready for deployment yet, but I'm hoping in about a year it will be, that will enable people to be scanned for knives as they walk down high streets, to take more knives again off the street. We want to use custody, so we've strengthened the 6-month minimum mandatory sentence for a second knife possession offence. So people who get caught twice carrying a knife go to prison for at least 6 months. And then there's the piece about diversion, so identifying young people who are maybe at risk of getting onto the wrong track and intervening early. Violence reduction units that are funded by the government do that. Sometimes it's educational intervention, sometimes it's like mentoring schemes, running apprenticeship schemes. It's a number of different things that put young people on a better track. So I think a combination of those measures will continue to get knife crime down. The number of young people admitted to hospital with a knife wound, which is the best measure or the most accurate measure of knife crime, because if you get stabbed, you will basically go to hospital, right? You don't rely on people reporting it. That's down by 25% over the last 4 years. So it is working. The plan is working. We don't want to go back to square one with Labour. Our plan is working, and we're going to keep pushing further.
OK, Chris Belt, Home Office Minister, very good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, let's talk to the CEO of the Safety Box, Nathaniel Peat, and activist for preventing knife crime, Mark Bracewell. Good to see you both this morning. Nathaniel, can we start with you? What do you make of what is being proposed at the moment? Is it enough? Is it necessary?
Well, I think it's definitely necessary to actually stop knives from getting onto the street, zombie knives in particular. Part of the reason, if you can imagine a pipe and you've got water flowing through it, the narrower the pipe gets, the less water is going to get through. And so actually allowing less knives on the street is going to bring it down somewhat. But you need to do more. You see, it's not knives and guns that kill people, it's mindsets. And that's the reason why you have to have support mechanisms. You need to lean on the third sector. You have to have programs for parents. You need to address the issues of trauma in children early. You have to work with young people that are in primary schools to stop them being groomed into gangs. Teaching teachers how to train other teachers and how to work out prevention methods for young people. It's really important that we wrap this around a lot of intervention and the investment into youth services, the investment into schools, into weekend classes, the investment into even local authorities so that they've got the ability to create wraparound services for these types of young people is essential. You can't just have a blanket sort of ban. We have to do more because it's not, as I said before, it's not knives and guns that kill people, it's mindsets.
Mark Bracewell, I can see you nodding along there, listening to Nathaniel. What do you make of this ban, and do you think it needs to go more to the root of the problem?
Yeah, I definitely welcome the ban. As Nathaniel said, left knives on the streets is going to have a positive effect on the results. But in terms of actually tackling the root problem, we need to get to the baseline of it, to where it begins. We need to be able to be in the homes, be in the schools. Everybody needs to work together, because if we don't work together, it's not going to work.
Yeah, do you know what? It's the fact that you said homes there, because there's a lot of focus on schools, understandably so. It's a good way that you obviously can get access to the children and get a message through. But how much of this is caused and therefore needs to be dealt with a change at home? There's lots of talk of families with absent fathers, and is that an issue? Because if it is, how do you even begin to address that?
It most definitely is an issue, and that's why it affects every form of society, because ultimately there is a lot of one-parent families out there and families struggling to raise young men who are not being shown how to be men and how to a man should behave within society.
Nathaniel, what do you make of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly what Mark's saying. I mean, families are critical. You've got mums that are pressured. Some of them have got 2 or 3 children in the house. They're working 2 or 3 jobs. You're in a socially deprived backdrop, maybe coming from, domestic abuse before. So the child's been exposed to all of that. So there's trauma within the parents too. And so it's important that the mums, the dads, the support framework around these children, the home, the family home is supported as best as possible. The issue that we've got is that the local authorities just don't have the capacity. The social workers are overstretched. The issues of social care for young people is a major problem. And we, as the third sector, are strained as well because the funding is just not there. But as was said before, organisations and government bodies like the London Violence Reduction Unit in particular that funds a range of programmes, the violence reduction units around the country which are trying to stretch their funding to help the third sector to support these families. The third sector is incredibly important in filling the gap in between the services and the public services that exist, because it's not only families that need that support, it's also even the officers, the police officers themselves. And so training for police officers so they can identify it, in fact, and not have a reactive, draconian type of method of policing knife crime away. Because even when you're looking at stop and search, from data from 2022, 71% of those stop and searches were NFA, no further action. And so if you're thinking about sending a rocket into space, if you've got less than a 30% chance of it going to the moon, are you going to send it up? So it's really thinking about how you're going to do stop and search better. It has to be targeted. It has to be really focused, and you have to learn from best practice. If you've got an officer that's got 9 hits out of 10, we need to learn from that officer. It can't just be a blanket. And so it's very important that it's a multi-agency based strategy. And I think the problem that exists is because we're not working completely together, it's still broken. You've got one borough command unit, let's say in London, that doesn't know what another borough command unit in London's doing. They're doing it successfully, the other one's not. And so you've really got to get the connectivity working, both with the third sector, both with the public sector, and also with the families and general public and charities, etc.
OK. Nathaniel, Mark, thank you both very much indeed.
OK, let's get your weather update now with Aidan McGibbon.
Hello, good morning. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A lot of cloud across the UK today with outbreaks of rain in many places, but it will also be mild. We've got our weather coming in from the southwest. Those southwesterly winds are pushing cloudy and damp conditions across the country. Yeah, there'll be a bit of snow over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but generally this is wet weather that's moving in. A chilly but bright start in the far northeast before the rain moves in during the afternoon. And the rain will be on and off in many places, most damp in the west, driest towards the southeast, mild everywhere, 12 or 13 Celsius. Now in the far west, some brightness as we end the day, albeit with a few showers coming along. But for many, we keep the rain going overnight. Again, heavy at times and persistent across western and eventually central parts. In fact, the rain, if anything, peps up overnight, heading southeastwards as the night progresses, followed by showers and colder air, perhaps a touch of frost in the far north under any prolonged clear spells, but enough of a breeze, I think, to keep generally frost-free conditions. Now we say goodbye to the rain first thing Friday, and then brighter skies across much of the country. Plenty of sunshine for England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland at times seeing blue skies. But there will be quite a number of showers into Northern Ireland, parts of central and northern Scotland, some snow over the tops of the mountains. Blustery here, fine elsewhere.
Oh, dear me. I just want it to be hot and sunny, frankly. But we're not getting there, are we?
No, but it is getting lighter in the evenings.
Yeah.
Apparently the sun won't set before 4:30 now until November.
Really?
Yep, that's some happy news for you this morning.
Oh, that is slightly better.
That is good. That's not too bad, is
nothing
it?
else. Look, coming up, we're going to be talking about war. I hate to say it, but there's all these warnings out that we need to brace ourselves for some sort of combat, although the PM's saying no conscription. Surely we're not in that bad a state, are we? We're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you.
every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other pay-per-review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:24 now. Breathe a sigh of relief.
I actually just did. You see that?
Did you? No, I didn't notice. But Downing Street has ruled out the idea of an army draft for now, after a top army official warned that Britons could face conscription if the country finds itself at war. Well, he sort of implied that. He was a bit more subtle than that, to be fair.
Yes, well, that's as Tory MP Tobias Ellwood, who we're actually speaking to a little bit later on in the show, said that the current state of world politics is reminiscent of 1939 due to ongoing conflict in both the Middle East and Ukraine.
Well, in the meantime, NATO has started its biggest military exercise since the Cold War, with 90,000 troops mobilising to show the world that it can defend its territory against a potential attack from Russia.
So we're asking this morning, could the younger generation cope with war?
Yeah, I don't know about the younger generation. What about any of us?
It's anyone under 55,
frankly, now.
Maybe, yeah.
Let's talk to former British Army spokesperson Major Mike Shearer, alongside political commentator Alex Petropoulos. Good to see you both this morning. Mike?
Yep, good to see you.
What do you think? Could we cope with another conflict?
Well, we probably will have to. I mean, the reality is our current Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, when he was the Prime Minister, has hollowed out the military. I mean, the army, if we look at it, is now 72,500. That won't even fill Wembley. And in normal military parlance, it takes 1,000 individuals under arms to constitute an army. And we don't have that. We basically have a home defence force. Now, if we want to have influence from our Foreign Office, you need to have an iron fist in a velvet glove, and we simply don't have that at the moment.
Alex, do you think we're able for war?
You know, I think there are certainly problems with our current state of our military, but I don't think that, you know, looking at it as just we need to boost conscription no matter what, we need to just get the number up is necessarily the solution. I think that it's quite a nuanced question. We need to modernize our military. But I think there are lots of ways to do that. And I think that if we actually want to boost numbers, conscription isn't necessarily the way to go about that. We could look at things like allowing maybe people from the EU who've settled in the country, who live in the country, who work in the country, who call it their home practically, let them join the army.
Well, hold on. Why would you say it's not important for the numbers to go up? Because if you want to, to defend our territory as well as lend our support to those places that need it, and we are part of NATO, of course, then we do need bigger numbers, don't we? And more money, better supplies, better equipment.
I think it's pretty nuanced. You know, we had record numbers of vessels in our Navy in the 1940s and 1950s, and the numbers have gone down from that. That doesn't mean that our Navy is less powerful than it was in 1940, right? The nature of our military.
I would think it probably does. Well, look, you raised that point. Let's put that to Mike. What do you think? Do fewer vessels and fewer sailors mean we're a less capable Navy, Mike?
Look, there is a notion, a very progressive notion, bots, not boots, and that goes really across the armed forces, the combined joint team, so the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. But look, that has to be for the birds. You need equipment, you need manpower. The notion that we can get away with gadgets, they can be defeated. Every time we develop a new armour, we develop another munition by which we can defeat it. And at the end of the day, sometimes what you need is a man on the ground with a rifle and a bayonet to cross that river. because you cannot do that on the notion that our new gadgets will do it, and so less is more. You know, just enough, just in time. It's never enough. It's never on time. We need to build it now. We should be on a Cold War footing now. When we were doing this prior to 1991, when the USSR capitulated, we had 155 soldiers in the British Army, 55,000 of which were stationed in Germany. But if you look now at the border that we're talking about, that we're going to need to defend in Europe, we're talking about from the Barents Sea to the Black Sea. The countries that will be involved in this, who will be right up against the metal of this, will be Norway, Finland, the Baltic states, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and in the fullness of time, Ukraine. You cannot do that piecemeal with Dad's army. You need to invest, and we need to do it now.
Alex, is now the time to be seeing more investment in terms of GDP? I mean, currently at 2%, many would say it needs to be much higher, especially in this time of geopolitical angst.
I'd have to disagree with that. I think the country is in a position where we're no longer in the position where we can be the protector of the West. We can do our part, and we should play our part, but our part isn't going to be this super nation, this superpower force. And, you know, we should look at ways we can boost our forces. But, you know, like I said, if recruitment is an issue, if we're struggling to get enough people into the armed forces, we should look at tackling that question rather than just throwing money at the problem. We should look at policy levers available to us to boost the numbers. We should say, you know, asylum seekers who are applying for asylum in the country, maybe they should be allowed to be fast-tracked if they join the military, right? Or people who are other forms of immigrants, maybe immigrants coming from NATO countries who live in the country, why can't they join the army, right?
Oh, well, that's an interesting point. Look, we'll leave it there. Alex, Mike, thank you both very much indeed. I don't really think sort of getting migrants to join up is the answer, or pulling policy levers. I have to say, I think it's about investment and having a good, strong army. I tell you what, Craig's been in touch, morning Craig, who says, an army we never use is exactly what we need. It needs to be of size and capability to act as a deterrent to the likes of Russia. I don't know why we have this attitude now where we don't sort of think we need to be able to protect ourselves or protect our allies.
Protect the West, yeah.
You know, we've got to be... And as Mike says, we've got a home defence force now, not an army, in terms of those numbers. Can I just ask you, Mike, if you build the reservists in, does that take us over 100,000? Are we reliant on the army with reservists?
Yeah, this is a false economy, though. And the reservists are very useful. There's no question about that. But we shouldn't be playing... When we have a strategic defence review, and they say this is all, we're now looking at what we can and what we need to do going forward. Actually, what they have is a strategic defence spending review, and they're looking at the money, not actually what it is that we need to be able to defend ourselves against.
Yeah. OK.
And General Patrick Sanders actually did say, even if we went over to 120,000, he still doesn't think that would be enough in our army.
It's not.
What would you say would be the correct...
Well, look, I explained a moment ago, prior to 1991, we had 155 soldiers on the ground. People are trying to justify this reduction by bots and technology. But one solar flare, which you can manufacture, it doesn't need to be natural, will wipe that out. Yeah. And as I said, at the end of the day, we should reconstitute some of our old regiments that were disbanded in the early 90s and get ourselves back up onto a proper Cold War footing again.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people would agree with you. Major Mike Shearer, thank you very much indeed. And earlier talking to Alex Petropoulos from Young Voices UK.
Yeah, and let us know what you make of that as well. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Let's talk sport. with Paul. Good morning.
In national service, some of the greatest footballers did national service, and they had the most... Can you imagine the most amazing football team back in the 50s? There was Bobby Charlton was playing, there was Cliff Jones was playing, Duncan Edwards, all playing in the same side, and then they would tour around the country and play. What? It was like the Harlem Globetrotters of football back then.
Well, yeah, but...
Carabao Cup. Shall I tell you a little bit about the Carabao Cup?
Yes, tell us.
Carabao, and this is another thing. You know, it's changed its name so many times over the years because it's all down to the sponsor.
Yeah.
The Carabao, there's been the Milk Cup, there's been the Littlewoods Cup, there's been Rumbelows, there's been the Worthington, yes, the Capital One. Any more that you can think of? The Coca-Cola, did we mention that as well? This is going up over the years. Still call it the League Cup, but anyway, Fulham drew 1-1 with Liverpool. There we are, there's the game at Craven Cottage there. Luis Diaz scored the winner. He scored the first goal after just 11 minutes, and you're thinking, this is going to be a rout for Liverpool. But Fulham came back, and they scored after the 76th minute. 1-1, then going at Liverpool, had a young side out, but they managed to hold on. There we are, looking very happy at the end. So it stayed 1-1, but on aggregate 2-1 to Liverpool, so they will now play Chelsea in the final on the 25th of February.
Okay. Should we look at the cricket?
Yes. Going on at the moment in Hyderabad.
But now, you were saying a short time ago...
Yes.
That we don't stand a chance because we never do when we're playing out there.
No, I didn't quite...
Well,
no, he said we're doing well.
No, but
I
then
didn't quite... It's tricky.
Tricky. Right,
Very rarely do teams win.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll accept to say that India certainly would be the favourites.
Yeah,
but
you said we're doing well.
We were doing well.
Oh,
but
we were. Oh, has it
then
changed?
we lost a couple of quick wickets just after lunch. So 133 for 5. If England can get 200, get post 200 on the board, then I think that will be a good score. But they're playing over there at the moment, and so that'll be going on for a while.
I'll tell you what, 35 minutes is a long time in cricket, isn't it?
It certainly
is. It's all changed since the headlines.
It has, yeah. Trust me. There's probably a couple of wickets have gone down while I've been talking to you at the moment.
But we
need to avoid the collapse.
To Monty Panesar next day, aren't we?
We will. Monty, who had great success playing for it. By the way, if you look at him, whenever you talk to spinners or bowlers, when they do this when they talk. So I don't know, have you noticed so many different sports people will do the action and he will be... Trust me, he'll do this.
I once interviewed Steve Davis. Spent the entire interview doing that.
Did he do it?
Yeah,
so annoying, though, isn't it? So annoying. Yeah. 10-pin bowlers running up, doing all this with the leg and stuff. Just talk to me. Yeah. We got time for a birthday, or do you want to do that later?
Oh, no, let's do.
Yeah, we got one. We got a famous sporting birthday for you. Who is this man? It's his birthday today. See if you can tell me who he is and how old do you think he is. Do we have him? I do. It's not.
No, do we?
It's not my birthday. Oh no, we're not. We're looking at the swimmer. We're not doing the birthdays. Trust me. I tell you what. If we were doing birthdays, we'd be talking about a 90th birthday. And this is Betty Brussels. She's 99.
99.
Now, 99. 400-metre freestyle. She broke the world record for the aged 100 to 104 world record. She won the 50-metre backstroke, the 50-metre breaststroke, did the whole lot on the same day. She's 99, and if you're wondering why she can be given the world record for aged 100 to 104, it's through birth year. So it's the year that she was born as to go with the season. But
I tell you what, good on her.
What? Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Where are you getting these women from? They're amazing.
I find them all over the place. I'm searching them out, Ellie, is what I'm doing. 400-metre breaststroke. I mean, it's incredible.
It is incredible.
So good.
Come on, let's have your birthday.
OK, we got him. Hopefully we've got him, a true legend of the game. And there he is. Oh. One of the most handsome footballers the world's ever seen, David Ginola.
Ah, yes.
Lovely man. How old do you think David is today? Do you need a bit of help with
64.
The date of that was like 90s. So we're probably talking, that picture is probably about 99.
64.
You think 64?
Yeah.
64?
60s, 70s.
David?
70s? I'll go 70s.
Oof, he's not going to like you.
I'll never be able to speak to David ever again.
No way.
57.
Oh, 57?
57.
Oh,
sorry, David.
Yeah, David. Very smooth.
David.
I was at a game once and he walked through, and he was walking through. This is when he was playing football. Everybody loved David, and there were a couple of women in front. David Ginola, and he was walking along, and a couple of women stopped like that, and he just looked around and he went, Hello, my darlings. And everybody, even I did. Where was such a wonderful man. But anyway, 57.
57.
Well,
oh, he's very young.
happy birthday to him.
Yes.
Very, very young.
Not quite in his
David.
70s yet. But there you go.
No, never speak to you ever again.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Monty Panesara now.
Yeah, look forward to that.
Thank you.
Now, Brooklyn Beckham is embarking on another business venture. But have we had enough of celebrities' children getting a helping hand? We'll explore that next.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:42. Good morning. Let's go through the papers this morning and get my words out. What am I doing? What am I going on about?
Need a tea, I think.
I do need another tea. Former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker and political consultant Emma Burnell are both here. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Let's kick off, Emma, with The Guardian. Fury over homes for British workers.
Yeah, so this is the latest government wheeze, which isn't going to happen, classic government wheeze. Rishi Sunak has announced that they're going to change the rules around social housing, that they can only be, or they'll be prioritised for British people. Now, the thing is,
why is that?
They already are.
Are they?
Yeah, social housing is almost exclusively for either people who are UK citizens or have settled status. That's just already the case. It is the reason that there's anger, and there's a long quote from Polly Neate of Shelter, which is quite right. And she's saying what you're doing is blaming the people at the sharp end of the housing crisis, not trying to solve the housing crisis. If you want to make sure that there is enough decent housing for everybody in this country, there's a very simple answer. Build more homes. Build more homes of all different types of tenure, including massive increases in social housing, and then we will not have a problem where we're trying to parcel out very scarce resources amongst competing groups of people.
But it's not unreasonable, is it? Even if you say it already is in place, but to sort of publicly say, well, actually, people who are actually British should be top of the list.
What's he trying to do with this thing? We're going to do a thing we're already doing. All he's trying to do is play to the worries of the Tory nerves about the Reform Party. So instead of actually doing anything that he can make a difference with, as Prime Minister, he's just indulging in this rhetoric entirely to throw some red meat to some voters he think might come back to him from Reform. It won't change the situation for all those people, UK citizens or not, on the housing list.
But he can't, as Prime Minister, just build more homes, have they? Because they've been trying to do that.
Well, he could have made it possible to do it. As Prime Minister and Chancellor, he's had quite a long time now to put in the things that would make an actual difference,
but they've been trying to do that for decades.
Well, you know what, part of the problem is it goes back to Mrs Thatcher and the right to buy, because I wasn't against the right to buy council houses, but the money that was raised from selling council houses, councils were not allowed to use to build new houses, and therefore there's an acute shortage of social housing in this country. And actually, there's plenty of houses going up in this country that are the wrong sorts of houses. I look on the train on the way up from Lewis to here. There's 3 or 4 bedroom houses going up in villages. They're not for local people. I don't know who they are for, but they're not meeting local needs. I want to make sure that housing is for local people, so when families grow up in a particular village, the next generation can stay there. They're being moved out. And instead of getting 3 and 4 bedroom houses for people coming out from London, you know, that's the problem. It's the wrong kind of housing in the wrong place.
And if you don't build that housing in those villages, actually all of the village resources get squeezed because there aren't enough people using them. You lose your local shop, you lose your local pub. All of these things are contingent on us making sure that people can live where they want to live.
Yeah, but you also need to bear in mind, you start building new houses in and around villages or small towns, and actually I know this from experience, people go mad. They don't actually want them.
The people who already are there don't want them, but there are lots of but more and more their children aren't able to come, and we just need to make that link.
They go less mad if it's going to meet their local needs. If they see local people getting those houses, they go less mad about it.
And build good housing. Don't, you know, a lot of the problem is those sort of estates that just look like boxes stuck onto a house with no resources, no infrastructure around it. Build good housing, build good infrastructure.
What about having fewer people come into the country?
Well, that's a whole different issue.
Well, it's not.
It's quite...
No, well, we've got 750,000 net migration.
Well, absolutely, but what I'm saying is, even if that were not happening, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we still had 5 million people on the social housing waiting list. There are lots and lots of people. We need to address this at source, and the source is supply of housing.
OK, Norman, let's take a look at this £600 million bailout for broke councils.
Well, this kind of leads on quite logically, because councils, and I speak as a former council leader, and former everything, actually.
You are, aren't you?
Former council leader, when we had...
Because I've done nothing.
When we had, you know, more and more restrictions placed upon us and less money. And we now got to a situation where councils, good councils, of course there are some bad councils, but good councils are actually running out of money and are facing bankruptcy. This has been now becoming...
Oh, hold on a minute. We had Elliot Keck from the Taxpayers Alliance coming on saying, actually, it's bad councils, badly run, badly managed councils that are going bankrupt, not the good ones.
No. There are some badly running councils, and some have speculated quite irresponsibly with public money. But there are good councils now. Take Kent County Council as Tory, actually, so I'm not defending the Dem Council. Kent County Council has been quite good over the years. It's now facing a huge problem down there. So is East Sussex County Council in my part of the world. They're not completely irresponsible councils. The fact of the matter is that the council money has been squeezed again and again and again each year. They've been cut to ribbons council funding from central government. And what's happened is that they're now facing a situation they can only afford, if they can at all, statutory functions like social care, which they don't fund properly anyway, actually, and voluntary functions, so-called optional functions, are now going. So half the bus services supported by local councils have gone since 2010, half the bus services. Look at youth services. We talked earlier on the programme, did we not, about diversionary facilities for young people. They've all gone, you know, nearly across the country. So anything which is not statutory is gone. Councils are really, really short of money.
And to add to that, and Norman's absolutely right, I mean, councils have seen a 40% cut in their funding. But at the same time as that 40% cut, they've also been asked to do more and more and more things. Yeah. More and more things are being pushed down from central government to local government. Now, in theory, I'm absolutely in favour of that. I do believe in localism. I think, you know, local decisions made as close as possible to the people that they deliver for is a good thing. But you can't cut people's funding and then tell them to do more at once. It's got to be a bit of push and pull there.
You're not telling me that a lot of councils aren't wasteful? But there's
there is no waste left.
There's always stupid art projects and statues.
Actually, art projects are actually bringing an awful lot of a good investment, because when you make a neighbourhood look good, it's called the broken windows theory. They did it in New York. It absolutely transformed the city. When you make an area look good, you decrease crime, you decrease antisocial behaviour, you decrease littering. All of those things cost the councils far, far more than making the street look like a nice place to be.
Yeah, and actually, if you want to look at waste, there's far more waste in central government than there is in local government these days. Yeah. Look at the PPE contracts handed out.
Well, I would agree that central government needs to tighten its belt as far as that goes as well.
But for people actually paying their council tax, likes of you and me, I mean, you could be seeing a 5% increase on
well, you will, because every council is going to push council tax as far as it can, because it's the only option it's got to try and get some.
What, is it limited to 5%?
But that's not. But the problem is, and this
is a referendum, I think, to go higher than that. I think
politically, this is exactly what I mean. Eric Pickles said it out loud. We're devolving the axe. They wanted to devolve the blame for poor local services down to councils, but they're the ones who took the money away and then told them to deliver everything.
Can we talk about Brooklyn Beckham, please? Because I know he annoys a lot of people. I don't really know why. I feel a little bit sorry for him. But basically, the story is he went to photography school, didn't he? Was not a very good photographer. I think we can all agree on that.
Oh, I don't, really?
And the very bad pictures. Look it up. It's quite bad. And he now wants to become a chef. And it's annoyed a lot of people because he's got the money and the profile.
Is he the one who got married?
Yes, the eldest one, yeah.
Oh, right, I lose track.
So now he's going to open up a new food joint in London, isn't he, Emma?
He's opening up pop-up, I think. They always do a pop-up these days. Where you can have his famous breakfast sandwich. It's news to me that his breakfast sandwich is that famous. I mean, the thing with this is, like...
Is this it that he's making?
One in 3, I think, restaurants fail. It's really, really hard to run a restaurant and to make it viable. But, of course, he's got more money than sense and possibly more money than culinary skill.
No, but to be fair, this is an Uber Eats thing. It's only open for 2 days and Brooklyn isn't going to be there.
Well, then what's the point of his name being attached to it? Other than...
It's sponsorship, basically.
Exactly. I mean, I'm glad he's probably not going to be cooking. I mean, just from a hygiene point of view, you have to be quite well-skilled and trained in actually cooking food.
He might be very good. He can flip a pancake. Look at those pictures. He can do it with his eyes shut.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah, you don't need to look at a pancake to flip it. You need to be... But, I mean, has he washed his hands? I want to see the video of him washing his hands properly.
Oh, give him in his own kitchen.
My favourite line in this is his menu has 5 dishes on it, inspired by his global upbringing, and those include a chicken tikka masala, a bolognese, and an English breakfast sandwich.
I like
it, Norman.
Well, I was going to say, I like the line that you don't have to look at a pancake to flip it, which sounds like it's very deep and philosophical.
It does, doesn't it?
I am very deep and philosophical.
Yeah.
I don't know about this breakfast sandwich. What's in it? But,
bacon,
eggs and bacon.
It reminds me we need some breakfast here, really. I'm a bit hungry.
Oh, yeah.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, let's have a look at IVF, Norman.
I love this story, Norman.
For rhinos.
Yes. Well, it's a nice story.
This is lovely. This is good news.
It's
very good news.
It's good news in one way, that technology and scientific advancement has enabled us to help the rhino. And this is the idea that scientists have carried out the first in vitro fertilisation of a rhino in a breakthrough experiment that could save other highly endangered species, and it involves impregnating a southern white rhino, no doubt. One who was not awake at the time, I would think.
Well, you'd imagine so.
I would imagine so. And scientists created the embryos using eggs harvested from the only 2 surviving female north white rhinos and sperm preserved from...
Only 2? Yeah, there's only 2 left.
Only
Mum
2.
and daughter.
And sperm preserved from 2 dead male northern white rhinos. I have to say that the sadness of this, it's a great story that we're making progress, but the sadness is how endangered these species are.
Yeah.
You know, they've been around the world for 26 million years, and now we're down to the last couple.
Yeah, it's very, really sad.
They must have... Presumably, they've got a load of stuff in storage, have they, so they can have enough genetic variability.
Well, you only need 1 rhino to repopulate the whole population, I believe.
But then they'd all be inbred,
Well, no, but then it'll be inbred, wouldn't they?
That's going to happen anyway, isn't it?
I mean, I think that is going to... If there's only a mum and a daughter, I mean, I think, to be fair, let's make the population up. I mean, we all came from... essentially cousins many, many millions of years ago. Sorry to creationists. But there are bigger issues, I would say, than the rhino's eyesight.
Well, it's incredible news, really, where science can take us. I think it's really quite exciting.
I do.
Yeah.
Anyway, Emma,
lovely stuff.
Norman, really good to see you both this morning. Thank you very much.
Just in terms of... Well, the general election, Colin in Kent's been in touch, saying tax cuts in an election year, nothing but a bribe to keep jobs. Interesting, that one. Anyway, all your thoughts on the politics and everything else, send them through. Here's your weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A lot of cloud across the UK today with outbreaks of rain in many places, but it will also be mild. We've got our weather coming in from the southwest. Those southwesterly winds are pushing cloudy and damp conditions across the country. Yeah, there'll be a bit of snow over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but generally this is wet weather that's moving in. A chilly but bright start in the far northeast before the rain moves in during the afternoon. And the rain will be on and off in many places, most damp in the west, driest towards the southeast, mild everywhere, 12 or 13 Celsius. Now, in the far west, some brightness as we end the day, albeit with a few showers coming along. But for many, we keep the rain going overnight. Again, heavy at times and persistent across western and eventually central parts. In fact, the rain, if anything, peps up overnight, heading southeastwards as the night progresses, followed by showers and colder air, perhaps a touch of frost in the far north under any prolonged clear spells. But enough of a breeze, I think, to keep generally frost-free conditions. Now we say goodbye to the rain first thing Friday, and then brighter skies across much of the country. Plenty of sunshine for England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland at times seeing blue skies. But there will be quite a number of showers into Northern Ireland, parts of central and northern Scotland, some snow over the tops of the mountains. Blustery here, fine elsewhere.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 25th of January. Today, the government launches a crackdown on zombie-style knives amid a scourging crime.
When someone has been the victim of crime, they deserve to have a police response. We've made that very clear to the police leadership. That will be something that happens now as a standard.
Your country doesn't need you. Downing Street rules out conscription after a top army general claimed citizens would need to fight in a potential war against Russia.
Tory critics warn the Prime Minister has under 2 months to improve the party's chances in the next general election or face more backlash from his own MPs. Olivia Utley has the latest.
Only 2 Conservative MPs have publicly called on Rishi Sunak to go, but number 10 aides are worried that plenty more are just biding their time.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex mingle with anti-monarchist politicians during a film premiere in Jamaica. But what does that mean for the royal family?
Paul Coyte's got all your sport.
Liverpool are through to the Carabao Cup final. We'll play Chelsea on February 25th. England currently 154 for 6, which is OK, playing against India. And we'll speak to legendary England spinner Monty Panesar, who'll join us a little bit later.
Lovely stuff. Aidan McGivern's got your weather as well.
Following a stormy start to the week, we've got further unsettled weather to talk about over the next couple of days, but not quite as wet and windy. I'll have all the details in the forecast coming up.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Loads of you getting in touch on the British Army and this prospect of war. Do we need conscription? How prepared do we need to be for things getting worse? I mean, it's all, a bit ethereal at the moment. We don't know if there's going to be any further conflict, all the rest of it, but do we need to build up the army anyway? Because the numbers are so low, actually.
Yeah.
David says the British Army has been stripped to the bone Too much woke, too many cutbacks.
Archie says the duty of the government is to protect us. With all of that going on, we should be spending at least 3% of our GDP on defence, not the 2.5% currently being spent.
Yeah, Stephen says, isn't it better to have it and not need it, rather than to need it and not have it? Well, you're exactly right. Exactly right.
Bertie says, I totally agree with Norman Baker, who earlier on was saying we can't afford to be the world's policeman. Yeah.
Oh, well, keep your thoughts coming through on that one. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Yeah, and loads of you getting in touch on knife crime as well. And that's because the government is set to ban machetes and zombie-style knives following a campaign led by the actor Idris Elba to remove them from the streets.
Well, the Home Secretary plans to make it illegal to possess, sell, import or manufacture such weapons, and those that do could face up to 2 years in prison.
We have already taken action to make the carrying of zombie knives illegal. When I became Home Secretary, I made the immediate decision to go further, to put forward this secondary legislation to support what we've already done, to make the possession of zombie knives illegal and to close the loophole. We have made it clear to the police that we expect them, in fact, we demand that they pursue every reasonable line of inquiry. When someone has been the victim of crime, they deserve to have a police response. We've made that very clear to the police leadership. That will be something that happens now as a standard, and we'll be holding the leadership of the police to account.
Well, earlier we spoke to Home Office Minister Chris Philp on the government's plans.
Combination of tough enforcement, record police numbers, using powers like stop and search, but also diverting young people into other activity to get them onto a better track. All of those things together have reduced serious violent crime by 52% since 2010, but we want to go further and get it down even more.
Well, let's talk to the CEO of the Safety Box, Nathaniel Peat, who's here. Good to see you this morning. Loads of people getting in touch on this. Tim says, why is no one saying that banning certain knives is somewhat ridiculous? It's people that stab, not knives. And whereas I can sort of understand the point, I mean, there's no way on God's good earth, is there, that we should have things like zombie knives on the streets of Britain?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, when you're looking at a zombie knife, what's it going to be used for? That's the first question. The way it looks, in fact, I know graphic situations that have happened with zombie knives where, I won't even say it on air, but, you know, you can imagine if you put a jagged edge into something, you know. But, you know, it is... I really agree, in fact, with this statement, because it's not knives and guns that kill people, it's mindsets. The key thing is the mind. You know, when you look at shocking episodes of people killing lots of people, it's normally down to a trauma that they've gone through. It's something relating to a mental health crisis. It's something that's not quite gone right in their family, perhaps. There's been a breakdown. And so banning the knives are a really good method of restricting the quantity of knives that you can get. But there are deeper and much more seated issues that we have really got to address. And start with young people.
How do we really get to the root of the issue then? Because it is a societal issue, isn't it? We're talking about gang membership here and why certain young people fall into gangs.
Well, I mean, absolutely. You know, social deprivation that you're talking about with young people. I mean, when you're talking about a primary school young person, let's say they're 9 years old, and you've got someone that is exploiting them, saying, yeah, after they get some young people to try to rob them, and then the gang member comes in and rescues them, and the gang member then gives them £100. Look, I can see you've only got, like, some cheap trainers. Would you like a pair of Jordans? And you can imagine what that child's going to be.
Is that how they do?
And the grooming that happens, in fact, and the lack of provisions within the schools. For example, the teachers are not well equipped enough to actually understand the safeguarding of those young people, or not lean on the third sector organisations, whereby those third sector organisations can go in and help those young people, even teach the teachers on how to do that. The parents, you've got issues with parents that are not supported by, you know, the social care system because of the strain or the lack of funding. In fact, we've actually got a campaign at the moment to support a young person where the local authority said they've got enough money to actually move him out of the area, and he's actually been exploited on a county line, you know. And so where you've got lack of funding, where you've got the lack of investment into schools, the lack of investment into families, where you don't have the right provisions for mental health support, it can create major challenges and for young people.
And a lot of people would agree with all of that. However, there's got to be questions about parental responsibility, maybe at the top of that list, hasn't there? I mean, with your example, if a young child's coming home with money in his pocket or a new pair of Jordans, whatever it is, surely a parent would notice and say, what's going on?
And that goes back again to the point of so many families struggle when they alert local authorities, they struggle. The social care doesn't really see it as a risk yet. And they've got higher cases, but what happens to that 10-year-old in 5 years' time? And so you've got to really intervene earlier. There's great initiatives. I mean, the Home Office has actually partnered with a lot of subsector organisations to push out the messaging around this. You've got the London Violence Reduction Unit, which is doing great work. Some corporates, in fact, have actually jumped on board in terms of trying to support some of these. And I think the solution has to be coming from every agency, every charity, every third sector, every organisation, every media body, in fact, to try to help this epidemic.
Is the deterrent serious enough? I mean, we're talking here about 2 years in prison. Is it a deterrent that would work if you're found with one of these zombie knives, or is it actually just a lot more about a lifestyle that's very, very difficult to break out of?
It is about a lifestyle shift, and you know, when you're talking about prisons in particular, you have to have the right types of intervention programs in prison. If you get a young person, let's say, that's been exploited under the drug line, they go into prison and they start fighting in prison, when they come out, they're probably going to be violent, so they're more likely to pick up a knife, and the offending rates are pretty high for young people. So it's about having the right support frameworks within the prison systems as well to ensure that when young people come out of prison, they have the ability not to offend again. And so there's a great reform that we need, both across education, both across prisons, across the entire country, and I'd even say even within government as well.
Nathaniel, yeah, really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the Prime Minister has ruled out the idea of an army draft. That's after a top army official warned that Britons could... I mean, he didn't say it directly, but he sort of indicated that Britons could face conscription if we were to find ourselves at war.
Well, that's as NATO has begun its biggest military exercise since the Cold War, with 90,000 troops mobilising to show the world it can defend its territory against a potential attack from Russia.
So, do we need to prepare for World War III? Let's talk to the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood. Good to see you this morning. I wonder if this warning which has been given out by the head of the army is it a play for more money, better recruiting, rather than actually saying we need to start drafting and conscripting people in the UK?
Good morning. I mean, if I may just quickly on that knife crime, because it's so important in Bournemouth to tackle this worrying trend. The police violence reduction unit was mentioned. I'm trying to get one of those here. So really glad you're covering this and to try and challenge this idea, this trend that it's cool to be carrying a knife. So thank you for doing that. But you're right. But we should listen to the head of the British Army, who says his wider piece was that the growing threat picture is deteriorating. Britain should wake up. How we do that as a society, well, that's a big question now. But from any angle, I think we can all agree that our world is becoming more contested, more fragmented, more dangerous. And Britain is very much exposed. We've got authoritarian states are exploiting the West's collective reluctance, if you like, to intervene. That's been progressive over the last couple of decades. We've entered a new era of insecurity. We're seeing countries like Russia, China, Iran become more assertive and work more as an alliance. So the big question is, what do we do to defend what's important to us? We may not want war, but war is heading to us in the next couple of decades. Now is the time to start thinking about it.
So how do we prepare, Tobias Ellwood? I mean, General Sir Patrick Sanders, the Chief of General Staff, says at the moment, even if we numbered 120,000 in our army, at the moment it's about 73,000, so we're a long way off. Even then, 120,000, he still doesn't think that would be enough. How do we prepare ourselves? I mean, we need to start spending more, don't we, on defence?
That is the bottom line. And I think that, again, over the last couple of decades, there's been a reluctance to do so. During the Cold War, we spent about 4% of GDP on defence. But when you understand that half of our GDP is affected by international headwinds, this is the important message, that our economy is absolutely symbiotic related to our security. Look what's going on in the Red Sea. When shipping is disrupted because we're not able to protect it, they have to reroute around Africa, and that has a knock-on impact to gas prices here in the UK. But during the Cold War, we had 50 frigates and destroyers. We're down to 15 today. We had 5 divisions in the Army. We're down to 1 today. We had 36 fast jet squadrons. We're down to 6 today. So yes, you do need to, if you're going to protect what's important to you and join with your allies, don't forget, it's not just Britain that does all the heavy lifting, then we do need to invest more in our armed forces. And I think the government is now recognizing this. The noise that you're hearing from Grant Shapps certainly is welcome, but big decisions, particularly when, understandably, people want to spend money on our schools, our hospitals, our roads, our policing and so forth. Ultimately, I'm saying if you don't actually look after your economy from afar, there won't be money in the coffers to be able to spend on these other domestic issues.
Isn't there an argument? It might be a slightly tenuous link, I'm not sure, but isn't there an argument to say, yes, the increased spending, difficult, but is there a potential for it to grow the economy? You've got more people recruited and working and therefore spending in the economy. You've got, well, potentially, you say, when it comes to vessels, you know, places like BAE Systems in Barrow-in-Furness, which is, you know, a town which is really struggling, actually could see perhaps a huge increase in the amount of work they're putting through and in the workforce and everything else. I mean, there's potential for growth in all of this, isn't there?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's why the government is putting forward its defence industrial strategy for exact reasons. If you can make equipment that's worthy to be sold abroad, to be exported, then there's money to be made in that. And we do a very good job on that front, but we certainly could do more. But that's one of the reasons why we're working with the Australians and the Americans and our new advanced submarines and so forth, working with other nations on our replacement to the F-35 and Typhoon, the next generation of aircraft. Exactly right. But let's not lose sight of the fact that, you know, our world is getting more complicated, arguably more dangerous than 1937. We've got this rising authoritarianism. Our countries are rearming. Adversaries are really stocking up on their munitions and their capabilities. And sadly, institutions like the UN are going the way of the League of Nations, unable to hold their nations to account. And when you add on top of that the advanced military technology that allows non-state actors like the Houthis or Hamas and so forth to cause massive harm, and then you've got cyber warfare, it shows how dangerous, how complex our world has become. It's all manageable, but we have to start thinking about this today.
OK, Tobias Elwood, very good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Well,
do let us know what you make on that. It certainly is very interesting. gbviews@gbnews.com. I do think defence going to be a very big topic ahead of the general election. I mean, we talk about the economy, don't we, and migration, but this is very, very quickly becoming, well, the national conversation, isn't it?
You know, do we need to have more respect for armed forces as well? I think that's unless you're involved in some way, shape or form, I think respect has possibly dropped off a little bit. But wouldn't you want to live in a... I mean, I don't want some great authoritarian rule, but the idea of a strong defence for the country is comforting. I find it quite comforting.
I find it comforting, but then you have others who would say, well, why do we need to get ourselves involved? Why do we have to be the world's policeman?
Well,
I don't think you get much of a choice, do you?
No, but then it is reliant on more people prepared to put their lives on the line for the safety of those of us who don't serve, which is another issue.
And how many would be willing to volunteer?
Well, you know, it can be a great career.
Oh, yeah, I'm not denying that.
It can be a fantastic career.
One of the papers, it does say, it's just, yeah, this is in the Times this morning. Apparently, according to somebody in the Times, the youth are ready to serve and they seek adventure. Oh, it's from a general.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. So,
well, it certainly is an adventure, especially for young men and women.
And it could be a really good career. But we need a lot of them, which is what I'm saying.
If you'd be up for it, let us know.
Yeah.
We'll turn into a recruiting office.
Yes. Although I'm sure they're going to be very, very busy in the next few months and years.
I sort of hope so.
Yes.
I hope so. I hope that the recruiting offices are busy and we get more people involved and wanting to pursue a career like that. Anyway, now Tory critics have warned that the Prime Minister has just 6 weeks left to turn round the party's electoral fortunes before Tory MPs really start to publicise their discontent, if they're not already.
Well, the two by-elections on the 15th of February and the budget on the 6th of March are being marked as key tests in Rishi Sunak's leadership.
Well, meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer says that the Prime Minister is being bullied by his own MPs.
Well, we're joined now by our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Very good to see you this morning, Olivia. So the clock is ticking for Rishi Sunak, about 6 weeks to keep hold of his premiership.
Well, it is. I mean, the worry for Rishi Sunak and his allies and aides is that there are two MPs who've publicly now called on the Prime Minister to go. That's Sir Simon Clarke and Andrea Jenkins. But obviously, there might be many more. And the process by which MPs can unseat a Prime Minister is by sending a letter of no confidence to the chairman of the 1922 committee. Those letters are written in private. Whoever writes one doesn't have any obligation to say that they've done so. And the chairman of the 1922 committee, Graham Brady, doesn't have any obligation to announce who's written those letters. So usually there are quite a lot more MPs behind the scenes calling for the Prime Minister to go than the public numbers that we have. There's lots and lots of speculation over how many letters of no confidence have been sent in, and the best theory we've got is sort of around 20, maybe up to 30. That is not good for the Prime Minister. There had to be something like in the mid-50s for the Prime Minister to have to face a vote of no confidence. Now, the idea is now that he's got sort of 6 weeks to try and turn around the Conservatives' fortunes. That number comes from the fact there are these two by-elections on the 15th of February and then the spring budget in early March. The by-elections in mid-February, in one constituency, the Conservatives have a majority of 18,000, and in the other they have a majority of 9,000. As we saw in the by-elections last year, the Conservatives are capable of losing majorities much, much bigger than that. But if they do lose those two seats, then there will be lots of rumblings among the backbenchers that it is time to get rid of Rishi Sunak. Similarly, the budget in early March, Jeremy Hunt has been doing lots of leaking to newspapers and to broadcasters, implying that there will be lots of big tax cuts. That's what the Conservative backbenchers, particularly on the right of the party, will be looking for in that budget. If he fails to deliver when we get there, if he feels that inflation is still too high or that he needs to wait until interest rates are lower again before he starts that tax-cutting mission, then you could see more MPs from that disgruntled right wing of the party sending in those letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister. So in the short term, it doesn't look like Rishi Sunak's facing a leadership crisis, but in the short to medium term, it could well be that by the general election, there is a new Tory leader, and of course, the fourth Prime Minister in just 5 years, that would be.
Heck. Olivia, thanks very much indeed. Would you stand for another leader? Another Prime Minister? I don't know. If that was to happen, it almost seems a bit like turkeys voting for Christmas for me.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a party in control, does
No.
it? Four
that's the problem.
Prime Ministers in 5 years.
But anyway, let us know what you think about that one. And of course, as we always say with these things, only time will tell. Who knows when the election is going to be either? I still think May.
I still think November the 14th.
May the 2nd.
Specifically.
May the 2nd, I think.
OK. Same as local elections.
Yeah.
OK.
I think
We'll see.
big tax cuts or big announcements of tax cuts in March, and then we'll implement them after an election in May.
Well, he's left it open, hasn't he? It could still happen. We'll have to wait and see.
We shall see. I'm no mystic, so I could well be wrong. Let's see what's happening with your weather today. Here's Aidan.
Hello, good morning. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A lot of cloud across the UK today with outbreaks of rain in many places, but it will also be mild. We've got our weather coming in from the southwest. Those southwesterly winds are pushing cloudy and damp conditions across the country. Yeah, there'll be a bit of snow over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but generally this is wet weather that's moving in. A chilly but bright start in the far northeast before the rain moves in during the afternoon. And the rain will be on and off in many places, most damp in the west, driest towards the southeast, mild everywhere, 12 or 13 Celsius. Now, in the far west, some brightness as we end the day, albeit with a few showers coming along. But for many, we keep the rain going overnight. Again, heavy at times and persistent across western and eventually central parts. In fact, the rain, if anything, peps up overnight, heading southeastwards as the night progresses, followed by showers and cold air, perhaps a touch of frost in the far north under any prolonged clear spells. But enough of a breeze, I think, to keep generally frost-free conditions. Now we say goodbye to the rain first thing Friday, and then brighter skies across much of the country. Plenty of sunshine for England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland at times seeing blue skies. But there will be quite a number of showers into Northern Ireland, parts of central and northern Scotland, some snow over the tops of the mountains. Blustery here, fine elsewhere.
Thanks, Aidan. Now, do stay with us because very shortly we are going to be joined by cricket legend Monty Panesar and his very long fingers, apparently. We're going to ask to see those, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Paul Coit, though, will be doing most of the chatting with him because he knows what he's talking about, allegedly. This is Breakfast.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. The time is 8:27. Now, critics have hit out at the Duke and Duchess of Sussex after the couple made a surprise appearance at a premiere for the Bob Marley biopic in Jamaica.
Yeah, now, interestingly, they were photographed alongside Jamaican politicians who've expressed a desire to break away from the Commonwealth and, therefore, the royal family.
So this morning we are asking, do Harry and Meghan pose a threat to the royal family? Well, joining us now is Richard Fitzwilliams, royal commentator, who says that they do, and historian Tessa Dunlop, who says that they don't. Very good morning to you both. And Richard, let's start with you, shall we? So we saw the Duke and Duchess of Sussex at this premiere last night in Jamaica. Do you think this was intentional in terms of timing?
Well, I think the Sussexes do absolutely nothing that is not intentional. I mean, you might not be able to prove it, but it just so happens in the week when, as we know, the King is having an operation for enlarged prostate. We know Catherine is in the hospital recovering from abdominal surgery. We also know that Jamaica intends to become a republic, though it has to have a referendum before this actually happens, unlike Barbados. So far as this is concerned, the Sussexes, they pose a threat to the royal family if they are not in work, which at the moment they don't seem to be, and also they are deeply, and they made this clear, they made it clear in South Africa in 2019, they made it clear on Oprah, they made it clear in that Harry and Meghan Netflix docuseries, and they also made it clear in Harry's memoir Spare, which was most unfortunate, that they are deeply bitter. If they don't have work, and they don't seem to have very much work, to me, Hollywood Reporter called them losers, then they are a threat, because the only way they can get money is by trashing the royal family, which is what they've done.
Tessa Dunlop, are they trashing the royal family by meeting these politicians?
Morning. I fear my dear friend Richard has perhaps rather overstated or overplayed his hand. No, I don't believe they really said anything. They just were invited to Jamaica to a significant premiere. I think I would have gone too, wouldn't you? The bigger issue, and it's almost like Britain at the moment with regards to Harry, is going through the 5 stages of grief. And to begin with, when they left, post that awful word Mexit, there was denial, and then there was huge amounts of anger. And now we're going to try and thrash around through the sort of bargaining depression bit, where we realise, particularly in the wake of a couple of health stories regarding our King and the future Queen, Kate, that actually Harry and Meghan are a huge loss. And then when we look at the optics of the situation in a country like Jamaica, which, by the way, isn't trying to leave the Commonwealth, Stephen, it's trying to potentially move on from being one of King Charles' realms, we see just how valuable the likes of Harry and Meghan's brand are. And there's a sadness, I think. I feel sad they're no longer part of the royal family.
Yeah, well, look, Richard, Tessa says you're sort of over-egging the pudding, if you like. I mean, I have to say, whereas initially the reaction is seen with these politicians, you think, what are they playing at? There's pictures in the papers of Prince William meeting at least one of these politicians as well. I mean, these conversations have to be had, don't they?
Oh, to be sure, but I mean, when Prince William met Andrew Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, this was in March 2022, and this was on a visit which he and Catherine made to the Caribbean, which was not successful. Now, as I say, I mean, obviously the Sussexes can do now what they like. They found freedom supposedly in Montecito, though not a great deal of work. They've lost Spotify. Their accounts were not impressive. All of this means that they are looking to heighten their profile and their brand. Now, if you look at the polls, you see how they're not only rock bottom in Britain, which I don't think they care about, but in the United States. And the problem there is, if they're seen as losers in Hollywood, if they have no specific role, if she doesn't go into politics, if they don't do a great deal of philanthropy, I mean, Harry, by all means, yes, the Invictus Games, sure, and also Well Child, and also Sentibale and the Suitor, but all of those he did before he was married, I would point out. The problem is, as a pair, at the moment, they are not succeeding, and I see this visit to Jamaica as a bit of grandstanding, which has specifically been planned because the Sussexes do absolutely nothing which isn't planned in advance very, very carefully. I mean, Harry may be a knight of the air because there was this rather bizarre ceremony last Friday which he participated in. She wasn't there. Well, they were both there in Jamaica, and they made worldwide news, and the one way they get to make news is their links with the British monarchy. And if you're the world's most high-profile monarchy, the problem is when things go wrong, they go stratospherically wrong. And certainly, I agree with Tessa, it was a tragedy what happened when they felt they had to step down. They blindsided the Queen, by the way, by when they made that announcement. But the problem is that where they are unhappy, as I see it, when it comes to work. And that is the problem so far as the monarchy is concerned, because will we have a series of books? Will she write a memoir? Will he, for example?
Well, who knows? Who knows? Just a very quick thought on that, Tessa.
The idea that Harry and Meghan don't do anything that isn't planned, I mean, where did they get that roadmap from? Everything the royal family do, they sneeze, and it's written in logs and it's been planned 2 days in advance. So I don't think we can criticise them for that. And I really, in many respects, Richard, you're exhibiting the grief and anger that I think the Brits have felt in the wake of Harry and Meghan's departure. And perhaps it's us that need to look at ourselves and ask, why did this impact us so gravely? And on one level, what we've seen play out over the last 2 weeks within the royal family, I think we can understand why this was a loss. Let's own it. Let's say this was a loss. We need to make changes, but we also can wish them well in their new pursuits. So great, they're at a premiere in Jamaica. Like I say, I wish I was there too.
OK. Tessa Dunlop, Richard Fitzwilliam, good to see you both this morning.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, it's time to go through all the latest sports news now, and Paul Coit is here with us. Morning.
Morning. Because you mentioned Bob Marley in the biopic, did you know that Bob Marley was a very big football fan and was a huge fan of Osvaldo Ardiles, who played for Spurs? He was his hero. Yeah. Not many people know this, but apparently Bob Marley was a huge Ozzy Ardiles fan.
Oh,
there you go. That's just a little something for you there.
Every day's a school day.
There you go. And I'm sure Harry had no idea. In the cricket at the moment, England are actually doing OK. 195 for 8, playing in India in that first test in Ahmedabad. And we've got someone to speak to, and we did mention him earlier, with the very long fingers, one of our great spinners, great spin bowler, made his England debut actually playing in India back in 2006. 2012, part of a rare England side to go over and win over there, and that's Monty Panesar, who's with us. Hey, Monty.
Hey, Paul. Good morning.
Listen, it's great to see you. I do want to mention, before we talk about the cricket which is going on at the moment, the first game that you played, now that 2006 game, isn't it true that you bowled your first wicket with Sachin Tendulkar, the little master, one of the greatest batsmen of all time, and your hero?
Yeah, it was actually, and I was kind of like pleasantly surprised. You know, I never thought I'd get him as my first Test wicket. You know, he's probably one of I believe one of the greatest, cricketers ever, to play the game. And recently, I was in Bangalore last week with him, and he was the captain of my team. And it was just sort of, I think at the time when I played in 2006, I was a little bit starstruck, And when I was fielding from mid-off to mid-on, it was like, I couldn't take my eyes off Sachin, like you see a supermodel, on the beach or something like that. I was just completely starstruck by him. His fame, what he, brings to the game is something else. You don't see it until you go there. And when I saw him last week, I could speak to him like a friend, you know, just have a chit chat, have a catch up, and I suppose, you know, that was quite a nice moment for me.
It's very much like me and Stephen Dixon. It's a very similar situation.
Very
Richard,
similar.
you know what I mean now, after all this time.
You've always been my hero.
I guess
Who likes a supermodel?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, but yeah.
I'd like to say.
It's a bit like when you beat your dad at something, and they say it's the saddest and the greatest moment of your life. It was probably when you bowled out Sachin Tendulkar. Tell me, though, about India. Now, for those that are not totally aware, when we talk about cricket, and it's always said that when you go to India, it's incredibly difficult to win there. Now, and hard pitches. Can you explain why? Why is it so hard to go over there and win? What's the main reason?
Yeah, because I think the ball just turns so much, and we don't get the sort of turning conditions in England. So our game is suited, you know, to play against a swing ball, the seaming conditions. But when the ball starts turning from day one, which we don't often see in test matches in England, it's a difficult place to adjust and difficult to, you know, find a method of how to score. And obviously England are doing quite well at the moment, but the real big talk was about, you know, the Baz ball, which, you know, basically means, you know, playing ultra attacking cricket, being ultra aggressive, taking the game to the opposition. And, you know, we probably would have thought that maybe England would have, you know, done that today. And unfortunately, they weren't able to do it. It's like, you know, the England football team going to Brazil and telling them how to play football. You know, it was going to be a big task for them. But, you know, they're still in the game. You know, if they can get to 250 in the first innings on a turning pitch, I think they've done quite well. And they're sort of counter-attacking at the moment. Ben Stokes is still there. So let's hope, you know, he keeps doing that. And, you know, I think 250s will keep them in the game. That will sort of keep the Indian batsmen on edge a little bit.
Sorry, Monty, a turning pitch. So how would you explain a turning pitch?
A turning pitch is where, you know, the ball kind of like sits into the pitch a little bit more and then it grips. So the wicket's already breaking up very early because of the nature of the soil. But in England, we don't have that. England, when the soil breaks up, it's the third or the fourth day. So on the first day, it's going to be very flat, and you can sort of play a bit more cricketing shots. You can play with soft hands, or you can play a bit more like a Geoffrey Boycott style innings, bat all day, not score a lot of runs. But in generally speaking, now because of the introduction of T20 cricket over the last 10, 15 years, this ultra-aggressive nature, what England are playing right now, that's the type of game they're trying to bring into India on a pitch where there's a lot more movement. So that makes that task a little bit more difficult.
Monty, you have been England's one of top spinners, and we're hearing from Paul Coit this morning that this is all down to your fingers. You've got really, really long fingers, so can we see them on the camera?
Yeah, I can, look.
Oh, they are long. And spin them round for me. In the motion that you do. Oh, wow. They are long.
You you do like 360-degree turn on your hands, though, can't you, Monty?
No, that was completely false information, and I don't know where people make this stuff up. I'll be honest with you.
So does that help then? Is it the length of the fingers? Does that help the spin of the ball?
Yeah, it does, because when you got long fingers, you can then bowl it quicker and get your fingers to go over the ball, which allows, which that's what you're looking for as a spinner, you know, bowling at a quickish pace and getting the ball to turn. But when you have slightly smaller fingers, it'll be difficult to get your ball over the ball, so you tend to bowl a bit slower. So that was always my strength, bowling it with pace and getting the ball to turn.
That's why they call me old stubby fingers, you see. That's why I never made it in cricket. Monty, very briefly, though, do we stand a chance? Can we win this Test series?
Well, I think England will probably have to... They'll learn by each Test match. You know, today, I think they've got to just focus on today. And, you know, it's going to be a big task. It's going to be a monumental task for this England side. If they do, I think Ben Stokes will be known as one of the greatest Test match captains ever to play the game. They've got every chance to do so. They just got to be aggressive, you know, be positive, aggressive, and have that bit of British steel about them, you know, when they're taking on the Indians.
Great to speak to you. Always a pleasure. You're a fantastic fella. Thank you very much, Monty Panesar.
There you go, you can't beat that.
Fingers.
But the thing is, though, is that where he had his hand in front of the camera,
you can't tell
it made his hand look like it was just this huge hand. So it's, you know, but he has got very long fingers.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Very
You wouldn't be very good.
No, but
Are you stubby fingers as well?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
no,
I'd
not
say
as
so.
stubby as yours.
Okay. Yeah.
Mine are longer than yours.
Give up.
Okay.
Mine are quite lanky.
No, actually,
Maybe
yours
I'd
are.
Be quite
She'd
good.
be quite good.
Okay, so you're
Chip your nails,
destined to be a
Chip your
cricket
nails.
player.
You're the fast bowler and you'll be the spinner.
I'll
then.
be the spinner.
We'll go and we'll go out in the car park a little
Go
bit later.
around.
We're going to go.
We'll try it out.
Yeah, let's do it.
As if we've got a car park.
Yes.
If only.
There's
If
one
only.
around here somewhere.
That'll be a sight for sore eyes, wouldn't it?
Anyway, still to come, France is pleading with the UK for energy investment. What's that going to mean for us? We'll find out in the paper review in just a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:45. Let's go through the papers this morning with former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker and political consultant Emma Burnell. Good morning, you two, once again. Norman, let's kick off with the FT, should we? France wants our money.
Yes, the French taxpayer wants our money because essentially what this deal on nuclear power investment is that the new nuclear power stations were going to be paid for by the French. under a deal we reached, but then the price of energy for the consumer would go up in order to pay for it, and there was a cap on the amount of capital expenditure on nuclear power station. Well, as we all know, nuclear power stations are always over budget and always late, and because it's going way over budget, 46 billion for Hinkley Point, 46 billion, then the French government is asking us to make up the difference, which I hope we won't do.
No. I mean, we shouldn't, should we, if it's their project?
Well, we've got a deal, and if they've signed a bad deal, that's their problem.
Yeah.
Well, and they'll get the income from it, won't they? So it does seem that they should probably, if they're investing, they should invest against that future income rather than just ask us to make up that difference.
Hold on, we need energy security, though, don't we? And a lot of people saying, oh, nuclear, you know, it's greener, it's, you know, low carbon, it's, you know... Why, then, aren't we investing? Because, you know, we've got the French providing them, we've got the Chinese wanting to build them. Why aren't we building our own?
We're cutting the Chinese out, which I think is the right thing to do.
Yes, but why aren't we building our own?
Well, we used to, of course, but we've stopped doing that, like we've stopped doing so much more in this country as well. But, I mean, the question is really whether £46 billion for a nuclear power station is going to be late is actually very good value for money. The nuclear industry always says it's going to be on target. It never is. And we were told in the 1950s, by the way, before I was born, that nuclear power was going to be too cheap to meter. That was a phrase he used to sell it then.
That's it.
And now it's massively expensive. It's costing, I think, 70 billion just to clean up the pond Sellafield. I mean, it's just enormously expensive.
Yeah, it really is. Emma, let's look at the front page of The Guardian, shall we? And this is Gaza siege traps many in hospitals.
Yes, so lots of people in Gaza have been sheltering in hospitals, in Khan Yunis in particular, which is the second largest city outside of Gaza City itself. And, of course, there is this ongoing siege, humanitarian crisis. And those people who've been sheltering, they keep being told to move, but they can't move. I mean, the whole thing is just, it's so horrendous. The people in Gaza are suffering. The people who were attacked on October the 7th have been suffering. What you've got is two very wounded sets of people lashing out constantly at each other, and the rest of us just watching on in horror as this humanitarian crisis unfolds, but also as Hamas do nothing to assist their own people and to lessen that burden. So I find anyone who takes a strong side either way on this is too often negating the humanity of the other side. But I don't think anyone can or should be looking at this without just feeling that sense of humanity and horror. And we do something needs to happen. And the international community have got to do something, at the very least, to get the aid that's needed into Gaza.
Well, you make a sensible point, which few people will like.
I know, I'm going to get so much joy on Twitter today, I'm sure.
Yeah, because this is not about taking sides, actually. There you go. Norman, this drives me mad. Smart motorways.
Well, I've got a campaign in my head to say they should be renamed stupid motorways.
Yeah.
There's nothing smart about them whatsoever.
Well, and, you know, there's a section I drive up every day on the way home from work, and whether the lane is hard shoulder or not, people just drive up it now, which is lethal, potentially.
Well, look, I mean, if you break down, and I speak as a former capacity transport minister, if you break down on the motorway, I mean, it's really, really dangerous if you're not on the hard shoulder because you get shunted up the back. You do. And the hard shoulders were there for a purpose. And it's a really stupid idea to say they should be part of the motorway network. Yeah. And now what we're doing with these bays, they're creating bays at the side. It's effectively recreating the hard shoulder in bits along the side. Well,
they're promised long stretches apart as well.
They are. They've promised they are long stretches apart. They've promised 150 safety bays. They've just built 13 only so far. So, you know, I'd be very, very... I don't like driving on motorways for that reason.
No. It happened to me the other day, actually. I was driving along the motorway and it said, use all lanes, use the hard shoulder. And literally, just after the sign, there'd just been a broken-down car on the hard shoulder. So imagine if you'd actually paid attention, moved...
They're really not that smart at all.
An accident waiting to happen. Yeah.
It's not. It beggars belief. It's lunacy.
Well, you can't trust it then, can you? Yeah.
No.
Not good. Emma, let's have a look at the minimum standards of English in care homes will not be raised. This is after a 91-year-old woman struggled to describe her condition whilst calling 999.
Well, it wasn't so much that she struggled to describe it, but she had two carers who were unable, when talking to the 999, I don't know if you have called 999, but when you do, they go through a series of questions, particularly if you're calling on somebody else's behalf. The coroner in this case said that because of the care homes are only asking for a primary school level of English, and these carers were unable to distinguish between alive and alert. And that's a very, very key question when you're on that 999 call. So there have been calls following this case for the government to raise what the level of English would be. Now, this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, is the vast, vast underinvestment in the entire social care infrastructure and system, which has meant that we're not simply recruiting vast swaths of that workforce from abroad, but also we're doing it at such low pay levels that the people who come will not have English up to a standard that would be able to cope in this situation. So there needs to be both something done in order to make sure that people who are coming here are better equipped with English learning and language, something that is essential to any integration as well.
Well, yes, it is.
I know there are some voices on the left who would say that that's racist. I think it's the opposite. I think making sure that everyone can, of all creeds, colours and races, whatever their nationality, whatever their birthplace of origin, can come together in a community is the opposite of racist. And I think that making sure that people are integrated, not isolated, is really essential.
Yeah, I think that's a fair... I think that's a really valid point, especially when you're in a caring profession.
Absolutely.
Like that.
And I mean, I've had grandparents in care homes that, thankfully, they received very, very good care. But you do worry that, when you're not seeing somebody more than, say, once a week or what have you, what is happening, who's talking to them, who's keeping their brain active by having those conversations.
Well, there's that, isn't there, as well?
Let's finish off, just briefly, Norman, with the Pope. The Pope, yes. Because he's already...
That's my kind of man.
He's talked about various gifts from God in the last week or so.
Yes, this is a bit surprising to me. I mean, he says that booze, well, you use the word booze, of course, is a gift from God. He says it's a true source of joy. And he even talked about having a drunk Pope. And, of course, that was after he said that sexual pleasure was a gift from God. So he seems to be quite modern, this Pope, and I'm waiting for him to endorse kind of rock and roll.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's been very busy, has Pope Francis.
Apparently.
His good and bad list. Yeah, so according to him, sex is good, alcohol is good, but surrogacy is bad. That was on the sin list.
Sex is good if you're married.
Sex is good if you're married. Sexual pleasure is good if you're married.
Yes.
According to
I mean, I'm not sure that a ring on your finger changes other bits of your anatomy in terms of what they feel or don't, but...
No, it's about the morals.
But hasn't he also been...
morals.
Oh, yeah, well, you're talking to the wrong girl.
I know.
Hasn't he also been quite keen to, relax the rules on kind of... gay relationships to some degree, blessings in church and so on.
I don't quite
I think
know
it's
the
blessings,
details.
not acceptance. Is
But
I think it's classic love the sin and not the sin kind of stance, I think.
Love the sin and not the sin.
Yeah, that's the kind of... That's how you get around being nice to gays without saying it's OK.
All right. Oh, I know. Well, there you go. We'll take it. Thanks, both. Here's the weather with Aidan McGivern.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A lot of cloud across the UK today with outbreaks of rain in many places, but it will also be mild. We've got our weather coming in from the southwest. Those southwesterly winds are pushing cloudy and damp conditions across the country. Yeah, there'll be a bit of snow over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but generally this is wet weather that's moving in. A chilly but bright start in the far northeast before the rain moves in during the afternoon. And the rain will be on and off in many places, most damp in the west, driest towards the southeast, mild everywhere, 12 or 13 Celsius.
Now, in the far west, some brightness as we end the day, albeit with a few showers coming along. But for many, we keep the rain going overnight. Again, heavy at times and persistent across western and eventually central parts. In fact, the rain, if anything, peps up overnight, heading southeastwards as the night progresses, followed by showers and colder air, perhaps a touch of frost in the far north under any prolonged clear spells. But enough of a breeze, I think, to keep generally frost-free conditions. Now we say goodbye to the rain first thing Friday, and then brighter skies across much of the country. Plenty of sunshine for England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland at times seeing blue skies. But there will be quite a number of showers into Northern Ireland, parts of central and northern Scotland, some snow over the tops of the mountains. Blustery here, fine elsewhere.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It is 9 o'clock on Thursday, the 25th of January. Today, the government launches a crackdown on zombie-style knives amid a scourge in crime.
When someone has been the victim of crime,
They deserve to have a police response. We've made that very clear to the police leadership. That will be something that happens now as a standard.
Your country doesn't need you. Downing Street rules out conscription after a top army general claimed citizens would need to fight in a potential war against Russia.
Tory critics warn the Prime Minister has less than 2 months to improve the party's chances in the next election or face more backlash from MPs. Our political correspondent Olivia Utley has more.
Only 2 Conservative MPs have publicly called on Rishi Sunak to go, but aides are worried that there are plenty more just waiting in the wings. Could we be heading for a 4th Prime Minister in 5 years?
Lord Cameron calls for a ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict in order to get aid in and hostages out.
It's time for an immediate pause in the fighting, because we've got to not only get the aid in, but crucially we've got to get those hostages out. And what I think we can do now is plan for how you turn that pause into a permanent, sustainable ceasefire.
Also coming up for you, the weather forecast with Aidan.
Following a stormy start to the week, we've got further unsettled weather to talk about over the next couple of days, but not quite as wet and windy. I'll have all the details in the forecast coming up.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Loads of you getting in touch on preparation for war. Gary says, in South Africa, I did 2 years conscription, best years of my life. I'm now 50 and I would volunteer any time. And similar to Darren, actually, who says, I'd be so happy to fight for my country should we ever get called up. I'm also 50, but happy to support where needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are saying this is an argument by Sir Patrick Sanders, General Sir Patrick Sanders, who effectively sort of waving a flag on this one and sort of saying we need to increase the number of armed forces. Yeah. If we don't, then we're going to have to start sort of conscription. Steve says stronger armed forces are a bit like an insurance policy. And I think that's absolutely right. And
that's what you were saying earlier about feeling comforted.
Gary in Plymouth is a bit more cynical, though. He says, I think a great number of young people would join the armed forces as long as they could work from home. Yeah.
That's a lot of criticism about the younger generation, isn't it?
But here you go. If you do want to think about it, Carol in Shoreham Beach says, my husband was an officer in the Royal Air Force for 35 years. It's a wonderful career. They work hard and play hard. We had a very interesting life with postings all over the world. Oh. To all you young men and women considering a career, join up to any of the 3 armed forces. You will not regret it.
Oh. It is a very good career, isn't it? To lots of young men and women.
Yeah, and it can also, I mean, not that it's universally for those people who are perhaps struggling in their youth, but for those who are, because we've also talked about with knife crime and things, how some people don't have a lot of direction in life, it can really shape someone because they get discipline and order and regimentation, and that can be really positive for a lot of people.
Yeah, and Stephen makes this point, not you, a different Stephen, says, imagine, talking about knife crime as we have been this morning, imagine how much knife crime and antisocial behaviour might be removed from our streets if young men and women were put through 2 years of conscription. Yeah.
Well, it might make a difference, but I thought we don't need to get to that, really.
No.
But I certainly think I really do believe that we need to increase the size of our armed forces so we are perfectly capable of doing what we need to do should the need arise.
And one last one from Dave here, who says, cut overseas aid and give it to defence. What do you keep those coming in. GBviews at gbnews.com.
Mind you, we have been talking a lot about knife crime today. The government's trying to bring in a new law to outlaw zombie knives and machetes. Zombie knives could be used for nothing good. They're horrific things. You would have thought they were all sort of outlawed already. I mean, they sort of are, and obviously you can't take them onto the streets, but just in importing, manufacturing them, anything else is going to be made illegal. But is it a sticking plaster solution first step in something that needs to be done of a wider plan? Well, let's see what the Shadow Policing Minister, Alex Norris, makes of all of this. Good morning to you. I mean, look, it might be a sensible step. Let's hope it is a sensible step. But there needs to be a broader approach, doesn't there?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Good morning and thanks for having me. You know, the government have announced this 16 times. We're glad that it's coming. We're worried that there are gaps in it related to some of the serrations on blades, some of the length of blades. There are also clearly profound issues on how these weapons are sold, both online but also some of the ID checks when they physically get to people. We need to do all those things better, but there does have to be an earlier, more preventative step. You know, we're announcing our Young Futures programme this week that's about having a hub in every community where young people can be supported by mental health services more generally, youth work, the local authority, employment services to get them off to a good start in life. But particularly for those young people who are found to be carrying knives, I think the public would be very surprised to hear that in general, if you're caught carrying a knife, only 50% of people are facing formal sanctions. We want to see every single young person who is caught carrying a knife referred into a youth offending team so that they can have those plans and support around them to get them out of those types of behaviours.
I mean, this is the Labour Party trying to look tough on crime, isn't it? I mean, you talk there about community hubs and wanting to install those, but also including sanctions such as curfews, tagging and behavioural contracts. I mean, unless there is somebody quite literally policing something like a curfew, how would that even be able to be enforced? So there would need to be serious money and serious investment in this plan, wouldn't there? And where would that money come from?
Yeah, well, our plan is fully costed. It's paid for by VAT being levied on private schools. It's paid for by the fees for gun licensing. So, of course, we know that all of our plans have to be paid for. But at the moment, we're not even trying with these young people to put those interventions into place. And then we're turning around and wondering why behaviours are escalating and getting to some of the most serious. So for us, it's about saying we've got to act for these young people as early as possible to stop them ever getting into these behaviours. But when they do, proper consequences that are supportive but are real ones too, because at the moment many are getting away with writing a letter of apology, and I don't think that that's being enough of an impact on that young person to make them change their behaviour, and I think that's what the evidence shows.
Yeah, but it is a huge socio-economic issue, isn't it? And a lot of it, we've had various guests on this morning, and a lot of them sort of agreeing that it is, you know, single-parent families, absent fathers. It is an issue because of a lack of role models and all this sort of thing. I don't even know how you even begin to tackle something like that.
Well, there aren't easy silver bullet solutions, otherwise we'd have done them. I mean, it's dangerous for politicians, but I reflect on my own upbringing. I grew up in a single-parent family, and, you know, I didn't do the sort of things we're talking about because I did have that support around me, and there were consequences for my behaviour. So sometimes that isn't present at home, though in many cases it is. But when it isn't, let's have that support there. You know, let's make sure that that person is feeling consequences, but that, you know, they're being supported, whether it's with their education, whether it's with the skills and training they need to get into employment, all those guardrails that all of us have in our lives that stop us falling into criminality. And, you know, we can add those back. As I say, you can't make that all go away with, you know, at one stroke of a pen, but we have to take the field again on this. And for too many of our young people, we're not even trying.
Whilst we've got you, Alex Norris, I wanted to ask you about the comments of General Sir Patrick Sanders, who has warned that an increase in our reserve forces, even up to 500,000, he says, would not be enough to see off Russia. Now, Downing Street, for now, have ruled out conscription. I wanted to ask what the Labour Party's plans were.
Yeah, well, Ali, conscription is not, it won't surprise you to hear, our policy either. We have long-term issues with our armed forces. We've got the smallest size of force since the Napoleonic Wars. We haven't hit a recruitment target for the last decade. We know that morale is very low at the moment. So, you know, clearly there needs to be change and reform. We would make sure that we met our obligations to NATO under the 2% of GDP, get that investment in the armed forces so that they're fit for the future. So I think the General's intervention has been a sobering one, and one that is likely to attract a lot of interest in Parliament.
GDP isn't enough, though, is it? I mean, it clearly needs to be higher if we're going to not only recruit but also equip our men and women in the armed forces.
Well, we have to make sure that we are, you know, having the technology and the equipment, as you say, to fight the conflicts that might come ahead. You know, we're not in conflicts at the moment. That's very good news, and long may that continue. But we know that we are in an increasingly unstable future. You know, I don't think, as I say, meeting our NATO obligations would seem to be a very good first basic step. You know, that's the level that's been set with partners around what we think the global threat is and what we need to do together. So that, for me, would be where you would start.
OK. Alex Norris, good to see you this morning. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Now, Tory critics have warned that Rishi Sunak has 6 weeks left to turn the party's electoral fortunes around before Tory MPs publicise their discontent.
Yeah, why that time frame, do you think? Well, there are 2 by-elections in February and there's a budget on March the 6th, so they are really going to be key tests for him.
Well, this comes after the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer claimed that Rishi Sunak is being bullied by his own MPs.
Well, let's get a roundup of everything that's happening politically at the moment with our correspondent Olivia Utley, who's in Westminster. Hi, Olivia. Can we actually start with the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, because he's on a Middle East visit at the moment, isn't he? What's he trying to achieve?
Well, he's been speaking to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, and actually the message that he had for Netanyahu was a little less supportive than what we've seen from Britain towards Israel in recent months. Cameron reiterated the UK's position that there should be a 2-state solution to the fighting in Israel and Gaza, something which Netanyahu has explicitly and repeatedly said that he doesn't want to see. He said that it would endanger the state of Israel. Now, that's not a huge surprise. Britain's position has always been that there should ultimately be a 2-state solution. But David Cameron also talked about the need, talked to Netanyahu, that is, about the need for a immediate humanitarian pause in fighting. Now, that's not the same as a ceasefire. The UK's position is still that Israel has a right to defend itself. But the UK is getting increasingly worried, along with the international community, about the level of suffering that is happening in Gaza at the moment. And what Cameron has called on Netanyahu to do is to have this humanitarian pause in fighting to allow aid to get to Palestinians and to allow people to flee those regions which are most heavily impacted by IDF fighting. That's where we are now. It's a little bit different from what we've seen in the last few months, but it is consistent generally with the UK's position that ultimately there needs to be a 2-state solution. It is interesting to see the UK Foreign Secretary at odds like this with Benjamin Netanyahu, because for the past few months, any foreign policy differences between the two have pretty much been papered over.
I was just in 60 seconds, Olivia, because we're tight for time. What I find fascinating listening to David Cameron is, if nothing else, he highlights the difference between him and Rishi Sunak, doesn't he? Authority with a little bit of charisma, which presumably is what his politics might not be right for the right of the Tory party, but he goes to show what a little bit of charisma can do.
Well, that seems to have been what Rishi Sunak sort of had in mind when he took David Cameron on for the job of Foreign Secretary. He basically wanted that job of Foreign Secretary at a time, obviously, of such global uncertainty to be given to someone who he sort of trusted completely to be able to go abroad and speak for Britain. If there was a different Foreign Secretary, perhaps a less experienced Foreign Secretary in the post, then it would probably be Rishi Sunak himself who was out in Israel and Gaza at the moment. But he has been able to delegate all of these jobs completely to David Cameron because of the gravitas that he has on the world stage, and probably too, as you say, because of his charisma.
OK, Olivia, thanks very much indeed.
Now, Britain's Newsroom is coming up at 9:30 with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. And Andrew is here to tell us all about it. Morning.
Morning, morning. How are you both?
We're very well. How are you?
All right, thank you.
Good. And
So what have you
coming
got?
up?
Well, we're going to talk a lot about the Prime Minister ruling out conscription in the army. I love that story. We did a poll on it yesterday. General Sir Peter, what was his name? General Sir Patrick Sanders saying we may have to enrol people like me and you potentially to join the army in future years because the army's so small. And we had a huge response, actually. 62%, by the way, saying you must be joking. So quite interesting.
But it's a ploy, isn't it?
Well, he's trying to show up how poorly resourced the army is now.
Yeah.
It's the lowest level it's been, 71,000.
Yeah.
We haven't had that few soldiers since the Crimean War.
Yeah, but we've seen it even with the Red Sea attacks and the Red Sea strikes, haven't we? I mean, just quite how difficult it's been, really. We've been having to fly from Cyprus.
And we've got two great aircraft carriers anchored in Portsmouth, but which have never been near a conflict zone. Is that haven't got the sailors to man the aircraft
It's ridiculous.
carriers?
Someone got in touch, actually. Oh, here we go. Barry says, get rid of the redundant, totally useless aircraft carriers which have no aircraft and give the money to the army. Stop spending money on vanity projects. I understand his point, but we need aircraft carriers. They are vital, actually, to the Navy.
But we need some sailors to put on the aircraft carriers.
Yes, we do,
There's not enough, and there's a recruitment crisis, so that's a big story. We're also talking about knife crime. Labour's saying they're going to crack down. Are they going to talk about stop and search? I bet they're not.
No. It's interesting, though, stop and search, talking to one of our guests earlier on, saying... around about 75% of stop and searches produce no further action.
No.
So they need to be more targeted, don't they?
It's got to be intelligent stop and search. That's what they need. It needs to be very careful. But that's because then you need police officers on the ground.
Police numbers.
On the beat.
Yep.
We don't see enough of those. We never see them, do we?
No.
Well, actually, we had another viewer who emailed in today saying that I think it's their husband works in the police force. They don't want to do stop and searches. They don't want to risk themselves. There's so few of them now on the streets.
Yeah, I know. And we'll also be looking, of course, at the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. He's had a pretty horrific time with knife crime in London in particular. 1,000 homicides on his watch since he became mayor.
That's a horrible figure, isn't it? Andrew, OK, we'll see you at 9:30. Thank you
very much. Now, stay with us, because cat campaigners are fighting... Is this you? For their furry friends to have the same rights as dogs. Oh, you've got both, so you'll have a view on this. Stay with us. We'll have more on that in the next few minutes.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. 2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Now, we are a nation of animal lovers, aren't we? But some of our furry friends are protected more than others.
Yeah, this is weird. In the eyes of the law, dog-on-dog attacks can be reported to the police, whereas for cats, they cannot.
Yes, now a campaign has been launched to equalise the rights of both animals in Britain. Our reporter Anna Riley has the story.
Cat owner Becky Quain still suffers from panic attacks after her pet was killed. She lost her beloved Moggy Freya in a dog attack last month, but police were unable to prosecute the owner.
By the looks of it, she died instantly. He'd got like the back of her leg, and she hadn't stood a chance because this dog was an XL bully who had jumped the fence and killed her in my sister's garden. I've gone into like a state of shock. I couldn't be in the house because obviously they had her body in a box, and then I've called the police, being like, look, this has happened, it's an XL bully. Even though it happened on like my sister's garden and all this stuff, I couldn't actually do anything.
After Freya's tragic death, Becky started a petition to strengthen legal protections for cats and to allow for prosecution of dog owners whose dogs attack, injure or kill cats.
I don't want other people, as much as possible, to go through what happened to me or my sister and all these people who've signed my petition, because it's like over 100,000 now, which I wasn't expecting. Yeah, I love them. I view my cats as my children. I don't have kids, but they are my kids, you know what I mean? And for her to be just taken away like that, and then I can't even do anything legally. Like, we had to pay for her to be cremated at the vets. I didn't even get an apology from the owners, nothing. Like, it's wrong.
The calls to change the law are supported by the Sheffield Cat Shelter, who have been working to help and rehome cats since 1897.
Cats should have the same rights. You know, they're family pets, and people who lose a cat to a dog attack or to a road traffic accident, you know, they feel the same trauma and the same loss that a dog owner does. So cats are just as valuable as dogs, but at the moment the law doesn't see that. It's only fair that they have the same rights and the same protection. So if this petition goes to a government level and they decide to back the changes, we'd love that, and it would give cats so much more protection, really.
With more than 100,000 signatures on the petition, there's certainly a strength of feeling from the public that more should be done to legally protect cats. Anna Riley, GB News.
Oh, I could watch cats all day.
Yes, beautiful. Now, that is it from us. We're back tomorrow morning at 6. Well, actually, you're not, are you?
I'm not, you are.
No, I am, though. Up next, though, it's Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev, who I can tell you is a vision in mint.
Hello, good morning. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A lot of cloud across the UK today with outbreaks of rain in many places, but it will also be mild. We've got our weather coming in from the southwest. Those southwesterly winds are pushing cloudy and damp conditions across the country. Yeah, there'll be a bit of snow over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but generally this is wet weather that's moving in. A chilly but bright start in the far northeast before the rain moves in during the afternoon. And the rain will be on and off in many places, most damp in the west, driest towards the southeast, mild everywhere, 12 or 13 Celsius. Now in the far west, some brightness as we end the day, albeit with a few showers coming along. But for many, we keep the rain going overnight. Again, heavy at times and persistent across western and eventually central parts. In fact, the rain, if anything, peps up overnight, heading southeastwards as the night progresses, followed by showers and colder air, perhaps a touch of frost in the far north under any prolonged clear spells, but enough of a breeze, I think, to keep generally frost-free conditions. Now we say goodbye to the rain first thing Friday, and then brighter skies across much of the country. Plenty of sunshine for England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland at times seeing blue skies. But there will be quite a number of showers into Northern Ireland, parts of central and northern Scotland, some snow over the tops of the mountains. Blustery here, fine elsewhere.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam,